Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting. This is a regular meeting. It is Tuesday, October 31st, 2023. Happy Halloween to everyone. It is 9:21 a.m. And this session is set to go until 12:15. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue, room 110 for public virtual attendance. You may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. Vice Chair Ty Menser in the boardroom, and Commissioner Gary Edwards joining via Zoom, and he'll be in the boardroom shortly as well. We also have Interim County Manager Robin Campbell, as well as Assistant County Manager Rob Gelder. Robin, do you want to start the meeting with our morning announcement?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Yes, I do. As we have been having for the last couple of weeks, we're having technical difficulties with equipment in the boardroom, which makes streaming our meetings very challenging. So what we're finding is that the streaming doesn't always work. It's choppy. It's hard to hear. We are, however, recording all of our meetings, and the recordings are being posted no later than the following day. So if someone was trying to follow along and instead, if they were unable to follow on the streaming, they can certainly pull up the recordings. And then for county staff, we have provided a panel link for anyone that wants to follow along, any county staff. So we do expect to have the new equipment installed by the end of this week. But for now, the recordings will be available.
Thank you. Any questions for Robin from the board?
No,
okay.
ma'am.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Okay, so then our first thing on our agenda is homeless strategies update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services. Here with a few updates for you. So first of all, I wanted to start with the right-of-way initiative, which is the governor's initiative to clear encampments along the I-5 and Washington Department of Transportation rights of way. And so there initially were 5 camps that were identified by the Governor Inslee's office, as well as the Department of Transportation, for removal here in Thurston County. That was Lily Road, City Center downtown, the Slater Kenny encampment, the Wheeler encampment, and Pacific Avenue interchange. All 5 of those camps have been cleaned and cleared. Currently, Department of Transportation is working on the city center, like they're still cleaning. So you might notice that there are some structures there. However, the last folks moved from those encampments 2 weeks ago. Subsequent to the DOT camps, Department of Commerce has also agreed to clean and relocate the residents from Nickerson Street, which is across the way from Wheeler Avenue. And at this point, we're on target for those individuals to be offered housing and to be moved by the end of November. There's about 19 individuals still remaining, and those 19 individuals will either go to the Franz Anderson Tiny Home Village, the Maple Court Enhanced Shelter in Lacey, and or another tiny home village. The Department of Commerce also issued a notice of funding availability, or a NOFA, for they're now calling it the Encampment Resolution Program, which is the next iteration of the right-of-way initiative. Thurston County was allocated some funds, and there were some specific responses requested on how to continue to move people out of rights-of-way encampments or encampments on other public properties into housing with a preference towards prioritization towards permanent housing. We did send in a proposal, and we are waiting to hear back from Commerce about what amongst the items that we suggested funding they will approve. And I will definitely bring you that information as soon as we have it. We anticipate the next week or two hearing back from Commerce about which of the items on our proposal we'll be able to fund. The point in time count for 2024 is well underway. So that's the annual point in time homeless census, where we are required by Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, and Department of Commerce to do a census on an annual basis. So we've begun the planning in earnest, and that will be taking place in January 2024, usually about the third Thursday of January. Those counts are conducted. So there will be many opportunities for volunteers. There will be some clothing and donation drives for that effort. And again, that information will be coming your way as soon as it is ready. And then tomorrow actually marks the beginning of our cold weather shelter season. That means from November 1st through April 30th, we have some extended shelter beds for families with children and youth and young adults. During hazardous weather events or extreme weather conditions, we will also have extra shelter beds available for single adults with Interfaith Works. St. Mike's and Sacred Heart will also be hosting up to 14 single men in their shelter from November 1st through the end of March. That starts tomorrow as well. So we're anticipating a season. It's an El Nino winter, so it may be a warmer winter, and hopefully we won't have a lot of hazardous weather conditions, but we're prepared if they do occur. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Questions, Commissioner Menser?
Yeah, so I'm sure the right-of-way initiative was kind of premised on the idea that we could place folks in those particular camps in housing, because there was investments in, helped us get Maple Court going, helped us with, I forget all the pieces and where the funding went. The county and city were working on, Housing Council was working on Francis Anderson and stuff. So looking at that, and that's because of the Martin Boise and all that. So looking at that model as it connects to non-right-of-way camps, I'm wondering, are we getting closer to a point where we have capacity for, I know there's projects in the pipeline and home fund dollars, like, are we sort of tracking, like, when we get to a point where we have capacity to like, let's say a new camp springs up somewhere that's not very convenient for anyone, and we can go there and say, look, we have this tiny home village, we have this hotel, this type of opportunity, which would say you can't camp here, but here's an, hopefully to them, much more attractive option. How are we doing with that? I mean, it always felt to me like that was the ultimate goal, right? To get around just random public camps and to get around Martin v. Boise. We wanted to have housing capacity, like, whether it's permanent supportive or tiny homes or, something beyond the mitigation site, right? But because that's not anything that's humane, in my opinion. But it's but something that's better than random camping tents and stuff. A lot better for folks than that. So I guess I'm just curious, like, with all the new projects coming down the pipeline, are we going to get to a point where we have that kind of capacity, or are we still going to always be behind?
That is a really great question and has about 30 different answers. And so I'd say, on the one hand, yes, we're slowly working towards basically a functional zero. So for any month that somebody ends up falling into homelessness, there's an equal number of open shelter beds. That is the goal. And I was just working out the available beds in terms of shelter for the hazardous weather season. And we've increased almost 150 beds because of the right-of-way. So we're upwards of 500 beds available on any given night for sheltering. That includes Quint Street Village, which is about 100 tiny home villages. That's 50 for Franz Anderson and 118 rooms at Maple Court. So we are increasing capacity. However, it's also fueled by demand. So there are, and you'll be seeing a presentation later this week on the rent assistance survey that our office conducted, and how many individuals in Thurston County are on the brink of homelessness because of being so behind in their rent and with rent increases. And so it's kind of not a wild goose chase, but we're building capacity, and also more people are falling into homelessness at the same time. With the proposal, if we were able to, if Commerce were to approve all of the items that we put into our proposal, it would be another increase of about 85 beds, many of whom would be about 30 plus would be permanent, so permanent supportive housing units. That's great. So our permanent supportive housing units are increasing, our shelter beds are increasing, and also the needs for those are increasing as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
That's all I have, ma'am.
Thank you, Keely. Okay. Keely, you mentioned in regards to properties, to public properties, that's a new guidance that I hadn't heard before. Before it was specifically for right of way. So with public properties, what does that mean? Like, does that entail like maybe county properties? Does it entail, where does the public properties line land when it comes to Department of Commerce?
Yeah, so slated for relocation or resolution is a Department of Environment, I can't remember one of the state departments that's over there in Lacey by St. Martin's College, Department of Ecology. So there's a camp that's been there for a while. That's not DOT property, it is state property. And then also Nickerson Street Camp, which is currently underway for relocating folks, is City of Olympia property. And then they're looking also at Percival Creek Camp, which is a mashup of a couple of jurisdictions, City of Olympia, City of Tumwater, I think also maybe the owned by the trains. I can't remember. I don't remember the name of it. But so those public properties, be they in jurisdictional property by city, county, or state.
Thank you. Does that mean that we have maybe identified a county property where this is happening? Or I know that we did this jointly, so I'm wondering, we were having some issues with the encampment by the courthouse, for example. But there was some issues just because we didn't have anywhere to offer them. And so with this, is that one of the properties projected?
That particular property, no, I think that one is completely cleared, and that was actually pretty successful. We did with partnership with a nonprofit here in Thurston County. I think 2 or 3 of those individuals, 9 individuals, ended up in housing, which is great. In the language of the NOFA from Department of Commerce, it says up to 20% of the funds from this initiative can go towards other public properties. So I don't know how that works out in terms of percentages, but I do believe that the ones that they have in their sites are already identified. So the Nickerson, the Department of Ecology, and then Percival Creek.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions for Keely?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Keely. Okay, so with that, we'll move to the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for a meeting of October 31st. And we'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m., the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Edwards, and then the approval of the Tuesday, October 31st, 2023 agenda. Any questions in regards to any of those issues?
No.
Okay. So then we'll have an opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update.
I will have no update this afternoon.
Is that going to be the chair of the board making an announcement about?
Yes, I do recommend that the chair make an announcement that the county has reached either agreement or tentative agreement with all of our collective bargaining units. And the final contracts will be approved. We're waiting on ratification, but the final contracts will be approved no later than the end of November, we're anticipating.
Thank you. Okay. I will make that announcement before public comment. Okay. So then we're moving on to consent agenda. Item 3A is the approval of the voucher list for the week of October 9th.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. This is your regular approval of payments made. Yesterday, Commissioner Edwards had a question about one of the items on the voucher list, and in looking into this, it turns out that this is the work that was done on the small parking lot right across the street from the atrium and had nothing to do with building 4. So it is a tenant improvement basically to this building for us to be able to use the building. This was to install the fence and the electronic gates. So we will move this item off of consent, if that's your pleasure, onto a department item.
Please, thank you.
Yep, okay. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions? Any other questions on the voucher list?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And so I heard that right, that it's now going to be a department item, correct?
Yes, it will.
Okay, perfect. So item 3B, Human Resources, is to approve the collective bargaining agreement between Thurston County and the Association of Thurston County Deputy Prosecuting Attorneys.
Yes, this item is the agreement as stated between the county and the deputy prosecuting attorneys bargaining unit. That has been ratified by the union members and is ready for board approval. We can't give details on what is in the agreement until after the board approves it this afternoon.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So then item 3C was an item that the board moved from department items to the consent agenda yesterday. And this is the Public Health and Social Services 2023 through 2025 contract for parenting classes with family education and support services for criminal justice treatment account funds.
Yes, again, this is an item to pay for parenting classes for parents who have behavioral health issues and are justice involved. And Shaylin is available to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for Shaylin?
No questions, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Shaylin, anything you need to add?
Nothing else, thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, the public might like to be aware that we went over this agenda yesterday, so I don't anticipate lots of questions. They might be wondering about that.
Yes. So we did review the agenda yesterday. And so for anyone interested, I don't know if there was any technology issues, but if there weren't, it should be posted if you would like to review it. And this was one of the items we discussed and decided to move to the consent agenda. Thank you. Okay, department items. First one from the Commissioner's Office, item 4A, is the Economic Development District Resolution.
This item is entering into an interlocal agreement with 3 other counties to form a regional economic development district. The district will be known as the Pacific Salish EDD, and this will enable all the counties involved to have better access to state and federal grant funding for projects that promote economic development. And Jenica is here if you have any questions.
Questions for Jenica?
No questions. We've went over this. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Jenica.
Thank you. Okay. Next item from Community Planning and Economic Development, item 5A, is to set a public hearing for comprehensive plan docket item CPA-4 capital improvement program.
Thank you, Commissioner. This item is for, to set a public hearing for your capital improvement program. As you know, this is a change to the comprehensive plan, and the CIP is passed every year along with the budget. So the public hearing is set for the same date as public hearings regarding the budget. And you've reviewed the CIP on at least 2 occasions, if not more, so far this year. And Andrew is here if you have any questions about this item.
Thank you. Andrew, anything you would like to add?
Madam Chair, if you didn't pick that up, Andrew said no.
Oh, okay.
He said no politely.
Okay. Any questions for Andrew?
No. No, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, item 5B is a final action for the development code docket, item A-19 of the wireless code update.
This item is a final passage of the amendment to the county's ordinance on Title 20, chapters 2003, 23.3, and 25.4, which update the county's wireless facility regulations. This brings us into compliance with federal regulations. We have been working on this code amendment for quite a few years, so it is a great accomplishment to get it over the finish line today. And Andrew is here to answer any questions that you may have about the final amendment.
Thank you. Questions? Andrew, anything you would like to add?
Nothing more to add. Thank you.
Okay. Questions? Commissioner Edwards, Commissioner Munster?
No, we've had lots of questions and lots of discussion. If the public is interested, there's plenty of public record on file. So thank you very much, Andrew.
I assume, Andrew, you'll go through a little bit of the history in terms of the fact that we started at this date and then we got a community, excuse me, the board directed a community work group be formed in order to manage some of the more technical elements and manage community input and see how we could improve. And then based on those recommendations, we had whatever it was, 5 work sessions, I don't remember the number, but kind of just walk through that so the public kind of gets a sense of how we got here.
Absolutely. I'll give a brief history of the entire project.
Thank you. That's all I got, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so let's do the next item,
Andrew?
which is the request for proposals for Thurston County Periodic Comprehensive Plan Update.
Yes, this is the issuance of an RFP to create a roster, if you will, of organizations that would provide professional services to assist county staff in the development of the update to the comprehensive plan. This would give the county access to experts in the various fields related to the plan updates that we don't necessarily have expertise in-house. And Maya is here if you have any questions.
Questions for Maya?
No questions, thank you.
No questions for me, thank you. Okay. So next item is from corrections, item 6A is to waive competitive bidding requirements for inmate employment services.
This item is for a contract with Pack Mountain, and our corrections to provide, pre-employment training to county inmates prior to their release. Covers things like job search, resume writing, interview techniques, and other, also connects our inmates to other services, such as housing, clothing banks, and other things that will be helpful for them upon their release. This is a 5-year contract. It's 1 year plus 4 extensions. The county went out with an RFP for these services and received no bids. Contacted Pack Mountain directly, who is our current service provider, and worked with our internal county auditor, who approved or indicated it would be appropriate for the board to approve a waiver from competitive bidding for this contract. You talked about this today, or rather yesterday. Chief Davis was here yesterday and talked to you. And we are requesting that you move this item to the consent agenda, to acknowledge that Chief Davis does not need to be here this afternoon.
Okay.
If you have any questions, I could try to answer them this morning, or
Questions?
No questions. We went over this yesterday as well. Thank you.
Questions?
and can we move it to consent? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, that's fine with me.
That's fine.
Yep, great.
Double fine.
Okay, moving on to Public Health and Social Services, item 7A is Housing Service Agreement with Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization for Treatment Sales Tax.
This item is an agreement with the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization, or the BHASO, providing treatment sales tax funds for the purchase of a house. The house will be used to provide a home and supportive services to individuals who are going through treatment for behavioral health issues. We have been working on this contract for quite some time. The legal review has just been completed, and we would ask the board's approval of this item now, and Shaylin is here to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you. Shaylin, anything you would like to add?
Nope, that was a great summary from Robin. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
I guess I'd just like to point out to the public that this is an opportunity for a one-time expenditure out of this fund, as the fund seems to be decreasing a little bit from past performance, leveling out, so it won't continue to draw down in future years. So, and it's gonna help some folks deal with some serious problems.
Thank you. Commissioner Menzer?
A quick question.
Go ahead, sir.
Shaylin, knowing that the contract is set to terminate December 31st of this year, is everything in motion from what you know relative to being able to close on that house prior to the end of the year?
Yes, that's a great question. Thanks for bringing that up. Yes, they have been working with a real estate company for the past several weeks, and they're sending them suitable properties every week. So they anticipate being able to close very quickly.
Thank you.
I had that same question answered at another meeting.
Thank you. Okay, item 7B is contracts and contract amendments of consolidated homeless grant inflationary funds.
Thank you, Commissioner. The state of Washington, through the Department of Commerce, has authorized the payment to the county of funds that are basically backfill for the decreased recording fee revenues that the county is receiving this year. And this funding is to be used specifically for salaries that enable nonprofit organizations that we work with to stabilize the workforce. And so this item is the approval of 11 awards to the nonprofit organizations that we work with using the funding from the state. Again, specifically for salaries, the distribution is based on the number of staff. It is a specific amount per staff person. And I think Keely's here if you have any questions about either the funding source or these contracts or the restrictions on the money.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
I guess the only thing I'd ask is this is pass-through funding?
It is.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Menzer?
Yeah, the way it's worded, it's contracts between the county and is there usually, a lot of times we have to take some action to even accept money from?
That has already happened. Yep, the acceptance of the money has already occurred.
All right.
Okay. Keely, anything you would like to add to this?
Nothing to add right now.
Thank you. Okay, 7C is to set a public hearing for the 2022 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report.
This item is to set a public hearing on November 21st. The county receives money from the federal government for the CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grant Funds and Home Funds. Those two funding sources require the county to provide a consolidated annual performance and evaluation report, and we are required to hold a public hearing on that report. So this sets the public hearing for the 21st. And Tom can tell you more about the report or the requirements.
Tom, anything you'd like to add?
Not at this time, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Menzer? Okay, thank you, Tom. No questions for me.
Thank you.
Okay, Public Works, item 8A, to set a public hearing to consider the transfer of portions of county roads to the Confederated Tribes of the Chehalis Reservation.
So this item, the county has been working for quite some time to enter into an agreement with the Confederated Tribes of the Chehalis Reservation to transfer portions of county roads to the tribes. And we have reached an agreement, and this would set the public hearing on November 28th to receive public comment on that agreement, and Matt is here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions? Or anything you'd like to add, Matt, before we begin?
No, Assistant County Manager said it, I'm sorry, County Manager said it very well.
Interim county
Interim
manager.
County Manager.
I said questions and I was looking directly at you. Sorry, Matt. Okay, questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I don't know if Matt will know the answer because he's pretty new to this process, but I think this has been going on for over 10 years, if I remember right. So the public should know that sometimes government takes a while.
I was going back in the folder last week, and I think the oldest briefing document I saw was from 2014.
This board's gonna do what no board has done before.
Let's do it.
I believe in it.
Thank you. Okay. No questions for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Before we go, quick question. This is under commissioner items later today, and I didn't know if it was on there because you had new information or if maybe that could be struck from this afternoon.
So it's on the.
Because it was on the board.
Yeah.
I didn't
It
erase
hadn't
it.
been taken off, so
Okay.
if there's nothing new on this, we could definitely take it off this morning's
I
agenda.
think you guys have heard everything I need to say about 4 times now.
Okay,
Okay, I was wondering the same thing, so.
Yeah, I just
perfect.
Great.
didn't go in and erase it.
Okay, so we'll strike off from our agenda the Chehalis interlocal agreement under commissioner items, as there's no new information on this item. So there will be a public hearing set for November 28th after board approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8B is to set a public hearing to consider updates to Thurston County water and sewer utility rates and charges.
So this item is set for December 5th. That is the same day that you will be considering all revenues related to the budget in accordance with state law. And this particular item is an increase in rates for our water and sewer utilities. This is directly connected with the board's motion and approval to consolidate our water and utility companies, if you will, into a single organization. So the rates need to be adjusted accordingly. And we have Tim here who can answer any questions that you may have about that.
Okay. Question, Tim, anything you'd like to add?
Good morning. I would just add that our current utility advisory committees have been made aware of these rate changes. And we have a communication plan that includes a webpage and utility bill inserts. So we have had an active communication and outreach plan on these rate changes.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions. Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menson? Thank you. Okay, and then our final item is to set a public hearing to consider no, never mind. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Lake Lawrence, sorry, I got them mixed up. Is to set a public hearing to consider proposed 2024 through 2025 rate increases for Lake Lawrence Management District number 22.
Yes, this last item, again, public hearing related to revenue that will support the county's budget. So it is scheduled for December 5th. This particular item is a rate increase for the Lake Lawrence Lake Management District. This increase will cover increased operating costs and treatments and is at the recommendation of both staff and the steering committee for this lake management district. And Tim can fill in any blanks.
Tim?
Yes, the great overview. The only thing I would add is the resolution of formation allows for annual increases of between 1% and 5%. And to Robin's point, this is coming on the recommendation of the Lake Lawrence Committee.
Questions?
No questions. Thank you.
No questions for me. Okay. After we will have our standing items and we will have 2 public hearings starting at 3:30. If we're still going through our regular meeting, we will pause our regular meeting to move to this 2 public hearings. The first one is public hearing for the City of Yelm and Thurston County Joint Plan update.
This update is part of your comprehensive plan docket. County staff have been working diligently to update joint plans with the cities and the areas of the UGAs. urban growth areas. And so this particular item is the Yelm Joint Plan. The board has had many work sessions on this. The item went through the Planning Commission. It's open to public testimony at this time, and you cannot take action immediately following the public hearing because it is part of a package of items that can only be voted on once a year. So we have Amelia here to answer any questions that you may have about this.
Thank you. Amelia, anything you would like to add?
No, Robin was excellent. Thank you.
Perfect. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, ma'am.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer? Okay, thank you. No questions for me. Our next one is item B, which is a public hearing from Public Works on an ordinance to amend Thurston County Code, Chapter 8.22.010 regarding the membership of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee.
So this is to change county ordinance, which is all about the membership of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. This changes the membership to acknowledge the addition of 2 new county commissioners next year. The committee recommends that the number of committee members remain the same, but the designation of the 3 at-large members changes, and Jeff can tell you more about specifically what those changes are.
Certainly. Again, a quick recap is the recommendation is to maintain the SWAC as a 15-member committee, reducing the number of citizen positions from 3 to 2, both of those being at large and from different commissioner districts, and then adding the agricultural representative as required by the state. I'm willing to answer any other questions.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No other questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer? Okay, thank you. And so then that will conclude our meeting for October 31st, 2023. Next on our agenda is the review of Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for our meeting of November 7th, 2023. Call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Vice Chair Menzer, and then there's the approval of the Tuesday, November 7th, 2023 agenda. We have 2 presentations scheduled for that day. The first one is Thurston County Public Works, American Public Works Association reaccreditation.
This first item is to congratulate our Public Works Department on the achievement of their 4th accreditation from the American Public Works Association. And we'll have members of Public Works in attendance that day.
Great. Questions?
Thank you.
No? Okay, and then our second presentation is Veterans Day Proclamation.
This is the proclamation of November 7th as Veterans Day in Thurston County, as it is across the nation, and recognition of veterans on that day. And I do believe that there will be veterans present at that time.
Thank you. I know that there is a veterans employee group in the county. Not sure if we can invite, some of our own employees that are veterans, that
Of course.
it would be good to recognize a lot of the veterans who work for
Sure.
the county and do that great work. I know Mark is one of them, so.
Yep. Mark, I think Mark chairs that group, or he used to. And after COVID, I don't know how active the group has been, but
I
we
believe Jose
can-
Vargas sent out
he did.
an email about it.
But we can certainly reach out and make sure that our county veterans are invited.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, Next is an opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update.
No updates at this time.
Questions? Okay. Moving on to our consent agenda, items A through C. 3A is approval of the voucher list for the week of October 16th.
So this is currently on the consent agenda. I've not had an opportunity to review the voucher list for this week. If I do and find that there are any items from the atrium, I will move it off consent. But if not, it will remain where it's at.
Perfect. Questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Next is item 3B from the treasurer's office, and it's to authorize the sale of tax title property via private negotiation to Dale J. Luger.
Here's the
We
map.
have Treasurer Jeff Gadman joining us for this item.
Thank you. So this item is the sale of tax title property. And we appreciate you being here, Jeff, to tell the board a little about this.
Good morning, thank you. And I want to let you know for about the last half hour, your YouTube stream has been kind of jumpy.
We know.
Okay.
Thank you, yeah.
So this property is near the intersection, 93rd Avenue and Little Rock Road. We have had it in tax title since 2014. Salmon Creek runs through the middle of this property, and it is considered 100% wetlands. There is no developed access. Actually, there is no legal access at this point to this property. The gentleman who is interested in buying it said that he has two goals. First one is to get it back on the tax rolls, and the second one is to preserve this from development forever.
Thank you. Questions?
Is he one of the adjoining property?
He is not.
Do you know if the adjoining property owners were given an opportunity or contact?
We would not have contacted them, no. But as I've said in the past, the adjoining property owners always know who owns that property. I'm yet to meet one that doesn't.
How big is the property again?
7.5 acres.
Okay.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
What's the price that?
He's buying it for $7,500 plus fees. Bless you.
Bless you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item 3C is Public Health and Social Services 2023 through 2025 Agreement with Dispute Resolution Center of Thurston County for Criminal Justice Treatment Account Funds.
So this item is part of the CJTA, which is Criminal Justice Treatment Account plan that the board reviewed and approved. This particular item is an agreement between the county and the Dispute Resolution Center of Thurston County to provide restorative justice facilitated dialogues to people who are involved in the justice system. And their victims, I think, is how that works. And when the board approved the CJTA plan, you asked that the amount for the Dispute Resolution Center be equal to what they were receiving in the prior year. So I do believe that this reflects that higher amount than was originally proposed in the plan. And Shaylin can answer any questions that you may have.
Shaylin, anything you'd like to add?
Nothing else. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Edwards, questions, sir?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Menzer, questions?
I guess I'm just wondering, aren't there a lot of different programs or recipients of these CJTA funds? And why are we having to see this one individually, not any of the others?
Because most of those funds go to county offices or departments for internal uses. This particular item is a contract with an external organization. And even though the dollar amount is small, which is why it's on the consent agenda, it crosses over fiscal year lines. And part of our procurement policy is if a contract extends into the future, that needs approval of the board.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
There's just one change, interim director of public health.
Oh, well, somehow we're still picking that up. That should be the director of public health. Thank you for catching that.
I can make that change.
Thank you, Lynn.
Okay. We'll move on to department items from Commissioner's Office. Item 4A is to extend interlocal agreement for a public facilities district. This is on our commissioner items. And so we will be coming back to.
Yeah, we can discuss this later this morning. In a nutshell, it is an interlocal agreement with the cities regarding public facility districts that support both the RAC and the Hands-On Children Museum, but more to come on this.
Okay. Any questions for Robin?
I guess more to come.
Yep, this morning.
4B is a resolution to join the Justice Counts Initiative.
This item is authorizes the county to enter into an agreement with the Justice Counties Initiative. That is an organization that is assisting counties nationwide to have access and quality assurance in data collection regarding law and justice. This has the agreement of the law and justice stakeholders here in Thurston County, and Leah can tell you more about the agreement.
So Justice Counties was a typo. I was typing way too fast and got very excited. It is the Justice Counts Initiative, which, as the interim county manager stated, is a nationwide initiative that is supported by the Bureau of Justice Assistance, as well as 22 other nationwide entities. This also partners with RTI, which our APPR project through Pretrial Services is working with, and is supported by the same entity that is working with the prosecutor's office on their data dashboard. As many of you know, our law and justice data is very siloed. So as of right now, if we go to one of our departments and say, hey, could you pull data on this? They often have difficulty doing that. We don't have anyone internally looking at data here for law and justice. For example, I think our last strategic plan said we wanted to reduce recidivism, but there was no baseline recidivism data or a goal by which we would reduce recidivism. And that's kind of what we're starting to get at here, is reaching this long-term goal of a law and justice data warehouse and starting to support our different departments and entities with that goal. So Justice Counts offers free technical assistance to counties and jurisdictions across the country to support those goals. By joining the initiative, we're gaining access to that free technical assistance. We would be one of their founding members, which gives us extended implementation and support throughout the duration of the project, but they would be able to support us in going through with each of our departments, such as pretrial services, the prosecutor's office, public defense, the sheriff's office, et cetera, and starting to look at the data they do collect, how we can begin to analyze that, what we're not collecting that we should be, in order to look at some of the questions we have, such as racial disparities and disproportionality in our system, recidivism, how effective our programs are. They're going to help us go through all that data, ensure that we have what we need, and how we can improve those data systems. And then they're going to help us move that into a data warehouse through our own IT department. And they're going to help us get all of that set up. And again, this is free to the county through the Bureau of Justice Assistance. And it just has my staff time as well as the staff time of our law and justice stakeholders. But as this is part of our strategic plan internally with Law and Justice through the Law and Justice Council, we're very excited, and I think all of our partners have agreed to and are ready to engage in this process. And so we're just asking for your formal thumbs up to join that initiative and take the first step in improving our data and increasing transparency here in Thurston County.
And Keely, you have questions?
No dollar amount associated with this out of our funds anyway at this point in time, right?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munson?
What was the meeting where they gave their presentation? Was it,
Jail resource team,
okay,
yeah.
and that's not recorded, but was something where the representatives presented to a variety of stakeholders and
Correct. So they did present at the jail resource team because this kind of ties into some of the goals the Stepping Up initiative has. So I felt that that was an appropriate avenue for that presentation. If the commissioners are interested, we could bring the group in for a presentation to the BoCC or maybe the Law and Justice Council as well, just to give a broader overview of the project and what they're offering to the county.
I was there, so I'm
I
good.
was like,
but-
I was there too. I was like.
But I was just trying to remember because, there's Innovative Justice, there's Geo Resource Team, there's Law and Justice Council, and I serve on all of them, so I couldn't remember what meeting we
There's a lot of groups.
had that presentation
Yes.
related to. All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, item 4C is to publicly available electric vehicle charging stations policy.
Yes, this item is the adoption of a electric vehicle charging station policy for the county. It sets the county's policy regarding making EV charging stations publicly available, as well as available to county staff. The board has reviewed this policy. It's gone through the entire policy review process, including the policy review work group, a review by the Financial Management Committee, and legal review. It's gone through all of those. Rebecca has made changes as requested, and we believe this policy is now ready for your approval. And Rebecca is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions for Rebecca, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Are we fairly sure that the time issue involved on charging or leaving a vehicle parked at the location, taking up a parking spot, a charging spot, has that all been adequately addressed? And is there a similarity in doing so with other jurisdictions that might be doing this?
Yes, thank you for your question, Commissioner. This follows on the briefing that we had on September 25th. And we made we took two steps to address the comments that we received at the briefing. The first was we revised the policy to include more specifics about management and enforcement of appropriate use of the charging stations. And the second was that we did communicate with neighboring jurisdictions about their experiences. So let me talk about the actual revisions to the policy first. In section D, charging station use, we more specifically than in the draft before, we now specifically address the state law, which is RCW 4608-185, to state that publicly available EV charging stations will be clearly identified through signage, and also that the vehicle must be actively charging when parked in the charging station stall, and violations will have penalties in accordance with the RCW. We also added specifics in number 3 under section D, stating that the county will develop procedures to enforce appropriate use of the EV SE, which may include posting time limits, applying monetary penalties, programming station software to limit session length and or other measures as deemed necessary. So again, this policy is a framework. After its approval, we will develop those specific procedures. This sets the options that we have, and there are great options available to us. The state law requires that charging stations be used for charging only. And so we can choose when we get into those procedures and when we have the actual projects at hand, we can choose, do we want to post a time limit of 2 hours or 4 hours? Do we want to program the station software to kick people off or charge money after a certain amount of time? So these types of network charging stations have software that allows that. For example, you can make it free for the first 2 hours, after which they would be charged $10 per hour of a fee if they go beyond that 2 hours or 4 hours. So those are specific decisions we can make at the time that we do install a specific project. And then, so the second thing that we've done is I spoke with counterparts and facilities managers in both Lacey and Tumwater who have free EV chargers at their city hall. Lacey has 6 free plugs, Tumwater has 3, and they both spoke to having a mix of users, employees, and members of the public who use them. They are not limiting time currently. Tumwater says they don't have a time limit, but they do have an unplug as soon as your car is full rule, and people are abiding by that. And so it has not been an issue in either jurisdiction currently that they're not getting complaints or anything from the public or from employees. So I hope that helps answer the question, and I will stop there and take any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
And who's going to be in charge of enforcement of any of those policies?
Yeah, that's also a procedural decision that we will need to address, is that on-site facilities managers, or is that the sheriff's department? I am not certain at this point. Robin, maybe you have some thoughts on that?
So I truly doubt that the sheriff will be engaged in people who have parked too long at EV stations. However, if we take the electronic route that has them free for a limited amount of time and then bills them after a certain amount of time, then we won't need to have a person assigned to doing the EV station checking on a regular basis. But we're going to work all of that out when we write the procedures.
Okay, then I guess my question is, do we want to do the policy before we get the procedures in place to see? I don't know how we start off without actually knowing some of these answers. Like, I do understand, so someone that parks there would put a credit card in, they'd get the first 2 hours for free, you're saying, and then it would attach a penalty rate to the credit card charging portion of it, is that right?
If they don't move. And I will say that it is normal to pass policy prior to procedures being written. But yes, that is, and again, as Rebecca said, the policy is written broadly to provide us options on how the specifics will be identified in the procedures.
Will these be like plugging into your home, if just a regular 110 outlet, or will it be like a 220 outlet that you might have for a dryer or a stove?
Correct. 240, which is called a level 2 charging station, 240
The
volts.
fast charge like the commercial Tesla and such are putting out. And then the rate of payment who is actually going to be paying for that? I understand the law allows for circumventing
Gift of public
gift
funds.
of
yeah.
public funds
This is not.
somehow. But, so is the state gonna get the bill for these electrical charging stations? Or will it be the county? And will we in turn bill the state for that dollar amount? I realize right now it's gonna start off at a pretty low level, but eventually, if everything goes right, it sounds like this is intended to expand. So it could start hitting our budget at some point if we're
Yes.
paying it versus the state. So
That's right.
do we have that laid
So
out?
the county will pay for these if we are successful at getting grants. We'll bill it to the grants, but this will be a cost of the county.
Okay, you said if we'll be paid by grants, if we're successful. If we're not successful with grants,
You're paid by the county.
it'll be paid by the county. Then is there a mechanism in place to bill the state? This is a statewide initiative, a state RCW. So I just want to make sure that the local taxpayers that are not going to be in a position to benefit this, and most of those are going to be in rural America, I suppose. I'd like to know just how that process might evolve and if there's anything in place to address that.
The state of Washington has not provided funding source for local jurisdictions to bill if we go with a EV station. They have not.
But that doesn't prevent us from billing them, does it?
Well, we could certainly send a bill to the legislature, but don't expect it to get paid.
Okay, more to come, it sounds like. Thank you.
To be blunt.
Questions? Commissioner Mensah.
So I wasn't at this briefing, and my understanding was that this was kind of an umbrella policy that didn't get into a lot of specifics. So I guess I'm just gonna ask a kind of backwards question. If we pass this policy, what are we not allowed, what does it preclude us from doing that we might wanna do or that somebody else is doing? What options am I limiting by passing this policy?
I don't think we're limiting any options that I can think of. That's an interesting question.
Well, because it's not telling me what we are gonna do, because this isn't about specific policies and it's not about what grants we're gonna get and where we're gonna put chargers and how we're gonna, so I'm wondering, what is it? It's gotta do something. So what is it not allowing us to do? What sideboards is it putting on our ability to implement this program as we go forward?
To me, it seems very enabling, and that's how we wrote it. It's enabling the provision of charging at the level 2 level. The intention that it states is to be free level 2 charging and fee-based DC fast charging. So we would not be, this one thing I guess is it does not enable fast charging to be provided for free. And this is to Commissioner Edwards' earlier question as well, is any free charging would only be at the level 2, which is the 240 volt, medium speed charging, which I presented at the first briefing that we had in March. I presented some estimates of the cost, which is, a few thousand a year. I could dig those up again, but level 2 electricity costs are not very high. So it would not allow free fast charging, which gets into higher costs. Other than that, it's very open, and that was the intention of it, is to enable us to advance EV infrastructure for the public as the grant opportunities come available, and they are coming available right now. In fact, I have 2 that I'm just turned in approval forms to Robin, and we'll be discussing those. So, and to get at your question, Commissioner Edwards, as well, when the policy is the policy. The procedures can be discussed each time we have a physical project to bring to you. When we have the grant and we are considering applying for, or hopefully, you know, being awarded the grant to install chargers, at that point, the specific procedures for any project at any site might differ from one site to another. So it gives us the flexibility to implement those procedures appropriately to each project.
Want to just piggyback a little bit on that. This is an enabling policy. So currently, what the county cannot do is offer free charging at EV stations to the public. And this, having this policy in place, it allows us to do that. And it is an essential piece for doing those applications for grants that Rebecca just mentioned. So I do believe that taking this forward creates opportunities that the county currently does not have by not having an EV policy.
Okay, is this going to be at locations affiliated with county activity? I mean, maybe a county office or a leased space or you know, fairgrounds or something like that.
Trailheads, possibly.
And just to give us an idea, how much are the potential of these grants you're asking for? I mean, are they $100,000 or $2,000 or, and?
Yeah, they, the ones I'm looking at right now are based on the number of plugs, and they have a maximum, one of them has $7,500 per plug. The other one has $10,000 per plug. So if we install 10 plugs at the $10,000 level, then that would be a $100,000 grant.
And so with the $10,000 installation fee or cost, is that about what it runs, or $5,000? I don't know what it really takes, but when we set up several locations for parking here at the courthouse, at the atrium, then we've got such limited parking. I'm trying to piece that all together. Whereas this all might take place, we'll develop that in the policy. Is that it?
It will all be dependent on there being available space. So for example, we're installing one EV station at this building. It's on the side where the power is available. I doubt that we'd install a second one, but we could do an analysis if there's a second space that makes sense. We have, I think we currently have, I want to say 3, possibly 4 stalls at the courthouse. Again, we can see if it makes sense to expand those or look at other parking lots adjacent to our buildings. We're looking at installing EV stations at Tilly, specifically at this time for county-owned equipment, but expanding that to county employees and the public at Tilly, at least during office hours. And then Rebecca is also
public health building too.
Yep, public health.
We're looking at for the grants.
Yep. So, and then where Rebecca's exploring the possibility and talking to Public Works, as well as facilities about trailheads, parks, fairground, and other places that they might make sense.
On those that are going to be available to the public to utilize, will these charging stations then accept a credit card, even though it's going to give you a 2-hour free charge?
For example.
As an example. And then after the 2 hours, it will start charging. Is that kind of the way these charging stations work?
Yeah, the grants that I'm looking at do require them to be smart chargers or network chargers. So they all have the capability of accepting payment. And then the host can program them as we wish, and they offer a lot of flexibility. So that's, again, a procedural decision we can make. The user would need to set up an account with that service. There's different, brands out there that you've seen probably. So people do need to set up an account, but that using the specific charger at that site would be programmed how we wish. So for the example that we gave, they could use it for 2 hours at no charge, or they could use it 4 hours at no charge. And then after that, their credit card would be in the system and it would charge them. And that would all be communicated as part of the service.
And when this credit card charge happens, is it up to our financial people to do the billing, or is it some automated system through the power company? How does that take place? And kind of where I'm going with this limited amount of time is, if we're going to encourage use of these EVs, somebody didn't get it, the power was out at their house or something, but they had business to do here at the atrium. So they may have got here with a low charge. So giving them the ability to get home or to another facility or something, I think we should always take that into consideration. So if we've only got 1 or 2 stations here, I mean, I think we really have to limit the amount of freebie time, basically, and have some mechanism to charge is all. So have we worked that out yet about how we bill and all that type of?
Yeah, that the county would not bill them. The service provider of the charging stations would bill them directly, because again, the user is creating an account with that server or that vendor. And then the county would just be billed on our electric bill. So whatever electrical panel those charging stations are plugged into is on a meter, and this charge would be added to the overall building meter. So it's not going to significantly increase the bill that we're already seeing at the building, because this is a very large building and the electricity provided for this charging is quite small in comparison. But it would just be shown on our that account that we already have with PSE.
We'd still have the ability to have the quantity of electricity, so we could keep track of that and get a sense on usage and how many more it would take to do.
Yeah, the network stations do provide all the data on usage.
So that would be a report coming from the vendor that
Yes.
installs the charging device.
So will we have a contract with the vendor? Is that kind of where we're going with this?
Yes.
Right. Probably whether it's an RFP, there's some process for selecting a vendor, and there are dozens of them. Based on whatever criteria that we would like in terms of functionality, put that out there, and we'll select someone that makes the most sense.
We've got a big roof on this building. Are we even contemplating maybe we could put solar charging on top of the building to help defer cost, or maybe a part of that grant process maybe?
We don't own this building, so that's not up to us.
Well, that's a drawback we've discussed before, but I thought maybe there was a way to do it. Okay. Well, I could use up more time, but I better leave it alone. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Rebecca.
thank you, Rebecca. Okay, item D is to set a public hearing for 2024 through 2025 biennium budget.
Yes, this item sets the dates for public hearings on the budget. These dates are required by state law. I think the RCW is 3640.071 allows for public hearing on beginning on the first Monday in December and continuing until they are concluded. So Nicole is on the Zoom to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Nicole? Commissioner Edwards?
I have a lot of questions. I just don't know if we'll have enough time to answer them all. So I think I might get a little one-on-one schooling on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
Just, as long as you guys are dialed in, I know we had an issue with this a few years ago about
Notification.
calculation of the weeks that, you know, it's so prescriptive in the law, how these have to be set, and I don't remember what exactly the wrinkle was.
Right, so the.
Online notice, and it was like the week of versus exactly 2 weeks before and all that.
That's correct. So the issue that we encountered a few years ago was the fact that the Olympian, when they published the second notice, did not make it obvious online of the date the second notice was published. So what the law requires is that notice of these hearings is published once every 2 weeks, once a week for the 2 weeks prior to the public hearing. The Olympian published both notices timely as required, and however, if you look online at legal notices on the Olympian's website, they only posted the date that the first notice was posted, not the second one. So that led to a citizen claiming that our second notice had not been posted as required by state law. However, we received a certification from the Olympian. We both had the newspaper that showed on the correct date that the posting was in the paper as required in the physical newspaper. And we were given a certification from the Olympian that it was also posted online as required. So we know that to have the dates that lead up to this, I believe this year are on the 20, I want to say the 21st, and so they'll be posted on November 20th and 27th of November. Our budget team is on track to have all of the information necessary ready to go by November 16th, so that the clerk of the board is able to send them to our newspaper of record, and the preliminary budget books will be available to the public as required. So all of that is in the works, which is why we needed you to make decisions last week, so that we could have everything done timely in accordance with the law.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that, I know you were there, but I wanted to make sure that some of the new budget team members weren't there, and that history was, you know, a flurry of executive sessions, trying to get some sort of notarized document from an office in Texas at the last minute. It was just a total nightmare.
Yes, it
Turned
was.
out to be completely frivolous and had no basis, but it really caused a lot of stress, and I wanted to make sure we avoided anything remotely like that this year.
Since that time, the clerk of the board receives documentation from the Olympian now every year whenever we post anything.
Thank you.
Can I add to that as well? Their postings do stay up online for like at least 2 weeks, because I have like the one posting that Public Works had me post recently about the speed limit changes for their hearings is still available online, and they only had it run one time. So you can still access that posting for this upcoming hearing.
Right. Right. But we are required to post once a week for 2 weeks, and we ensure that that happens.
Well, there was that whole other issue. It might have been a different year, frankly. I don't remember, but there was a difference of opinion about whether once a week for 2 weeks meant just sometime in that week for 2 weeks, or did it have to be, if the hearing was on a Monday, did it have to be the Monday and the Monday and the Monday? Or could it be sometime in that 2 weeks before, sometime in the next week, and then before the hearing?
Right. So
And again, legal
we are
counsel said
clear.
one thing, but Citizen X said another thing, and we went round and round and round chasing our tail about that one.
We are very careful to ensure that that it's 14 days prior to the public hearings and 7 days prior to the public hearings. I would also say that we had many different opinions about the need for the board to set the public hearing at your Tuesday afternoon on an agenda item as you see before you. That is not necessary. And in fact, in our county code, we specifically have the meeting dates for the budget hearings, that they will be in accordance with state law. So having these Tuesday afternoon items to set the public hearings is not necessary, but we do it to avoid any potential challenge that everything was done properly.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Right.
And then item E is to set a public hearing on revenue sources for the 2024 through 2025 biennium budget.
Yes, item E, also required by state law regarding the budget. The law requires that you hold a public hearing on all revenue mandatory that will support the county's budget that you have under consideration. So you must hold, as part of this hearing, specific information about the property tax levy, and you must hold this hearing before you adopt that levy. So it is also set during the dates when you're holding hearings about the budget.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I guess I do have one question on that topic is, oftentimes we get ongoing revenue that comes in, and we might do budget amendment 3 and 4, whatever it is, as time goes on, because we received that money coming in. Do we just estimate that dollar amount, or do we just base everything on what we know we're gonna get, and then if those other revenues develop and happen to come in, then we just adjust as we go along?
Nicole, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So thank you, Commissioner Edwards. So concerning the revenues, we do take into account estimates. So we look at projections and where we think the revenue will be. We also take into account any grant revenues that might come in the future. And so as revenues come in, we also incorporate that into the budget. So there is continuously looking at revenues to see what's projected. And then also if something develops from an office or a department, we will also incorporate that in the budget at different amendment times.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munster? Okay, no questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 5A, Community Planning and Economic Development, is interlocal agreement amendment for voluntary stewardship program.
Thank you, Commissioner. So at this point, I'm going to say how much I appreciate that staff attend these, because this is all the further I got in reviewing the agenda for next week. So I will start us off on these, and then staff can let you know more about each of the following items. This next item 5A is an interlocal agreement regarding the voluntary stewardship program. We have an agreement with the Thurston Conservation District, and that agreement is going to be increased by $7,500 because we have received additional funding apparently from the state of Washington. So we're going to increase our contract with the Conservation District, and we have Ashley here to tell us a little more about the services that we'll receive for this funding.
Ashley, we're not hearing you, even though it looks like you unmuted.
It still says connecting, doesn't it? No,
No.
I just can't see. I saw a C.
We don't have a camera either, if that's on.
Here she
Here
goes.
she comes running.
Look at that.
He is gonna join us in person.
I apologize.
I think you're right.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm having technical difficulties as well at my desk. So we have been very successful in securing 5 additional cost share projects. And those are projects funded by the Washington State Conservation Commission. As you know, we have a partnership with Thurston Conservation District to implement our voluntary stewardship program. We are the pass-through agency. So whenever we are successful in getting those projects funded, we have to update our agreement to acknowledge those pass-through funds that will go to the Conservation District. So that is what you're looking at now. We also have received additional monitoring funds. They weren't able to line it up perfectly when we went through the interlocal agreement only about a month and a half ago for approval. But some of those additional funds will be passed through to the Conservation District so they can support our 5-year monitoring report that's due next year. Sorry, I ran. Happy to answer any questions, and I don't have it in front of me to know the exact dollar amounts.
So we're currently getting close to $400,000 from the State Conservation Commission to work on projects. Is that what we're getting? And this is an additional amount of money that we're getting.
Oh, so our current contract is in the area of like 220-some thousand. This is additional to that. So the monies that you see there, the 396,000 will all go directly to our farmers to implement conservation projects with support from the Conservation District. And we were number 2 last year, the first time they ever made this funding available, number 2 in the state for receiving dollars to get projects on the ground.
Could you give us, for the public's benefit, just a couple of examples of what these projects might be and how they help, say, the environment or whatever,
Yeah.
water quality?
Some of the ones we did a tour, so I got to actually see some of these. And so if you think of like a heavy use area, like around a watering facility for cattle, being able to put in like an impervious surface that, you know, has proper drainage and whatnot, rather than just having mud and erosion that might generate some water quality concerns to water bodies, you know, adjacent to those farms. Every project has to go through like a ranking process and get reviewed by the work group. A lot of the ones that we're seeing right now are for those heavy use areas, which are one of the #1 best management practices identified by NRCS, as well as waste storage facilities. And so, you know, covering where those manure piles are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Menzer? No. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. Sorry for the mad dash.
Okay, public defense, item 6A is the approval of a contract with the Washington State Office of Civil Legal Aid.
This item is a contract with the state, who is providing funding to the county for our public defense attorneys to work with justice-involved individuals who have prior drug charges, I'm assuming?
Any charges.
Any charges. So Patrick will tell you a little more about this item.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Happy Hallows Eve. Great day in our community. So it's a great opportunity for our office. We could have brought this before the board a little bit sooner, but we wanted the board's budget deliberations to conclude. So we were awarded, I applied through State Office of Civil Legal Aid, who was a recipient of a community investment fund, applied on behalf of Thurston County to fund 1 public defender and 1 paralegal to be full-time employees within our office to provide legal financial obligation relief for prior criminal convictions. Similar process to we conducted in the legal financial obligation reconsideration day that was widely successful. This opportunity for us is really a tremendous opportunity. I think we were the only second county, and there were only two counties, I think, in the state that were awarded. But I know it's the Homish County and Thurston County. So this is an opportunity to sign a contract not to exceed $364,000.
What's the dollar amount?
$364 through 2025. And so what will follow from this is that we've alerted Human Resources. They have the classifications and the jobs ready to go. So if the board approves me signing off on this contract on behalf of the department, you'll soon see Human Resources in the following weeks coming forward with a paralegal position and a public defender position to approve that will exclusively do this work. The funding's through 2025. Obviously, we're hopeful that funding will continue in the future, but it may not, so these will be end date positions.
And will that dollar amount show up in here? It just didn't say the dollar amount.
It's in the AIS.
It says 10%.
It's in the contract.
Pardon?
Would you like to have that dollar amount added to the motion?
I believe that's beneficial
We
for the
usually
public to
do,
know that we're
yeah.
getting revenue in
So we can add that.
rather than putting revenue out.
Agreed.
Questions, Commissioner Munster?
So this is about financial obligations?
Right, so we've had, significant changes in the law back in 2018. So individuals with prior criminal convictions that were assessed legal financial obligations. Those legal financial obligations prior to 2018 were they were statutory and they were mandatory. So there were crime victim penalties, DNA penalties. If it was a drug conviction, a drug penalty from $1,000 to $2,000, depending if there was a prior offense. But all those legal financial obligations had a 12% accruing interest on them. And so there are thousands of individuals that are legally eligible to have those financial obligations relieved from their judgment and sentences. It's just a matter of us, individuals knowing the law, which they need some help in knowing the law, and then having an attorney file the appropriate motion and order, very simplistic motions and orders, but we have a constant stream of individuals, obviously, that are appointed to our office that are eligible, and then we can make ourselves available to the public and to the community that's listening, similar to what we did in legal financial obligation reconsideration day, which some of the stories from individuals that have been straddled by legal financial obligation debt for decades, frankly, that were really never able to make any headway on their debt, were able to have that debt legally removed and know those obligations free and free to move on, to vacate their convictions, free to get housing, job opportunities, a whole host of things that really provides for a healthier community. So probably a longer answer than you wanted.
No, I mean, so this is kind of like implementation, like specific implementation of a state law change is what I'm getting.
Yes.
And so the language here about addressing harm inflicted by war on drugs, I guess that's where, county manager was saying, does it relate only to drug convictions, or is that coming from the state law?
It includes providing the LFO relief for individuals that had prior drug convictions. So our Blake team provides the vacations of the criminal convictions, but not the LFO relief. So.
You said it could be any offense.
This could be any offense. Yeah, any eligible offense, which is essentially all eligible. All offenses are eligible.
They tack it on forever.
Forever, right.
They tack it on for, there was a drug fund, if I remember right, there was the $1,000 drug court assessment.
Correct.
But there's a whole bunch of other ones that apply to other kinds of crimes that aren't drug.
Yeah, and so, we won't be able to serve everybody, but by having one, again, that's why we needed a dedicated paralegal, because the motions and order is true paralegal work. They can be working on that 40 hours a week, and then the attorney reviewing motions and orders. So we've set some goals with Oklahoma. We think we can reasonably relieve $1 million worth of debt in 1 year. Considering we did $500,000 in 1 day, I think we can. I try to set an achievable goal because it's very prospective. I have no idea how much we'll be able to relieve. So we're really excited about it.
That's great. Okay. Do you have any additional questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to Public Health and Social Services, item 7A, 2023 through 2025 interlocal agreement with Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization for Criminal Justice Treatment Account Funds.
Yes, this item, again, is part of the Criminal Justice Treatment Account, or CJTA, plan that the board has already approved. This particular item is the interlocal agreement with the Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization, also known as the BHASO, to carry out services in accordance with the approved plan. And Shaylin can tell you exactly what services the BHASO will be providing.
Thanks, Robin. Yeah, these services would be providing housing to participants that are involved in the criminal justice system and have a substance use disorder. So it would be things like housing case management and housing rental assistance.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Ernst?
I guess on this particular issue, that's going to be an ongoing expense that, contrary to the house purchase, which is a one-time expense, I believe, right?
Yes.
So we can kind of look forward to this coming in every year. This is an annual cost, or is this for the 2-year period?
This is a 2-year contract in accordance with the 2-year grant that we have from the state of Washington for the CJTA funds. And this grant money comes in and is reassessed every cycle. So this sets up the next 2 years. Whether or not it continues after that will depend on the amount of money the county receives from the state for CJTA, and what you will recall that the county forms a council with very specific representatives in accordance with state law, and that group recommends to the board what's in the plan. And this particular item is in accordance with the current plan.
Is this $182,000 per year or $180,000 for 2 years?
Shaylin, this is the 2-year, this is the total amount.
Correct, that's the total amount, so $91,000 per year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, questions, Commissioner Menzer? Okay. Moving on to Public Works, item 8A, resolution and call for sealed bids for Johnson Point Road and Hawks Prairie Road intersection improvement projects, CP number 61364.
Thank you, Commissioners. I am just going to turn the next 3 items straight over to Matt and Brian.
Perfect. Brian's going to cover these next 3 items, but this is the first opportunity I've had to introduce Brian as our new design manager. He's replacing Teresa Parsons, who did a fantastic job in her 17 years here. But we're looking forward to working with Brian, and you'll see Brian a lot more. So Johnson Point and Hawks Prairie.
Yeah, so this is a call for sealed bids and resolution for Johnson Point Hawks Prairie. This project's a single-lane roundabout, construction of a single-lane roundabout with associated signs, striping, some storm drainage, some ADA access, so sidewalks and ramps. Currently, the intersection's a stop-controlled intersection. It's 50-mile-per-hour roads on Johnson Point and 40 on Hawks Prairie, and some limited sight distance there and some poor visibility at nighttime. So the lights will help out that. Construction cost is estimated to be around $3 million. It's $2.774 million from a federal grant, the Surface Transportation Board. And the rest is coming from traffic impact fees.
So
The answer.
I want to highlight no road fund money in this. And the fact that this project is well needed. It was prioritized from our safety program. Unfortunately, we've had multiple fatalities at this intersection. And it's also being highlighted from our traffic congestion program because we're up against the thresholds that we've identified as our limits for levels of congestion in our comprehensive plan.
That's those wait time things and stuff.
Delay at the intersection.
You got it.
I am curious about the sidewalks, because there aren't any sidewalks out in that neighborhood yet.
Yeah.
Is it a plan for?
So with the roundabout, we do the crosswalks. They're kind of asphalt sidewalks around the roundabout, just kind of like, it's a raised sidewalk. So if people do walk out there, there's somewhere kind of to go safely.
I think more than walkers out there, we see a lot of bicyclists.
Okay, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Mensah? No questions for me, thank you. Okay, item B and C are for pavement preservation projects, and resolution for, sealed bids. So if we can cover those two items together.
Sure. So both of these ones also is resolution and call for sealed bids to go out to bid with these projects. Both of them are preservation focused, so we'll be grinding up a top layer of asphalt and replacing with a new asphalt surface. Along with that, we're going to be doing some sidewalk and ramp improvements along both sections. So the first section, Pacific Avenue, goes from Rich Road or Lacey city limits at Carpenter Road all the way to Union Mills. It's just under a mile. It's estimated to be about $2.5 million in construction, and it's 100% grant from the federal government. And then the other section, Yelm Highway, is 1.25 miles approximately. It's about $2.7 million, and it's also 100% grant.
Thank you. Questions?
Well, keep up the good work. I'm glad to hear you're getting those grants. That really alleviates our problems with road funds. So I was going to lead on the crab board, but it looks like you got it covered.
We're in good hands.
Questions, Commissioner Mensah? Okay, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Item 8D, request for proposal for collection, transportation, recycling, and or disposal of used oil, antifreeze, and oil filter services contract.
So this is a request for proposals for a vendor who will collect and dispose of used oil, antifreeze, and filters. And
I had
we'll
seen
ask-
Jeff up there.
I did see Jeff, and now I don't see Jeff. So
I think we covered this
Yeah.
earlier
Yeah.
on. I don't have any
we
questions.
covered
about this.
something like it, but this is, I
Oh,
think,
it has
very,
a house
very, yep,
contract and stuff.
yep, it's connected,
Yeah, okay.
separate but connected.
Okay, you,
I'm good with it now.
See it
We'll
again
probably
next
do
week,
more later.
Yeah.
okay. Then we'll review our standing items. We have 2 public hearings. The first one from Community Planning and Economic Development is the Lacey Joint Plan.
Yes, like the Yelm Joint Plan, this plan with Lacey is regarding, having the same development code, in effect for our Lacey UGA, that's the urban growth area, as in the city of Lacey. And again, this is one of the items that is part of a group of items on your docket that would be accepted once per year. So Leah, would you like to say a little more about?
Good morning, Commissioners. So it's the comprehensive plan for the Lacey urban growth area, and there are several other projects rolled into it. One is the low-density residential consolidation, and I think that's what Robin was referring to. And there are 3 site-specific rezone requests. There's a UGA expansion, and then the Lacey Joint Plan itself, whether you want to update that. So the public hearing will be about those items. We'll take comment on all of those items from the public.
Thank you. Questions?
No questions.
Questions?
And that hearing is when?
That is next Tuesday,
The
November 7th.
And then what will be our deadline, Leah, for, because this one was one where we had Lacey City Council saying one thing, unanimous planning commission saying the exact opposite thing. So I know that we're like at the end of the year and we're trying to fold this into our comprehensive plan. So how much time will we have after the public hearing to work out those wrinkles in order to still meet our deadline and get this approved this year?
Well, we have a briefing the next day on the 8th. We've set aside an hour to talk about all of those issues. And then the tentative date to adopt the comprehensive plan, which the joint plan is part of, is November 28th. So a couple
Okay, so
weeks
there
to
might be
think
some
about those
time
things.
if there's
Yes,
additional board work that needs to be done.
that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item B is public hearing on an ordinance to amend Thurston County Code, Chapter 2.7.010.
Yes, and I'm going to just turn this one directly over to Rob.
Commissioners, as you know, this is one of those topics we've chatted about a number of times. This is an amendment to Thurston County Code that increases the membership of the Thurston County Board of Health due to the increase of the Board of Commissioners from 3 to 5, but also because we have to maintain that balance, it will allow for us to identify one or more individuals that would be the citizen or community representatives for the 3 prescriptive cohorts that we need to account for as well.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Mensah? No. Okay, no questions for me, and that conclude the agenda for November 7th. Let's go ahead and take a break, and then we will move into legislative check-in because I know Deborah has been waiting patiently for us. So let's go ahead and take a little 10-minute break. Okay, we are back from break. It is 11:26, and we're going to pick up with a legislative check-in. And so we have Deborah Munguia, who is our lobbyist for the state. And so,
Yes,
Robin?
thank you, commissioners. As you know, we've been discussing legislative priorities the last few weeks. Before you, you have a draft. This is the long list of items that were ideas on things that we could have on our legislative priorities for the coming legislative session. I've given you this list in the past, and then I also sent it out on email last night, and there is a copy in your packet. So
It's a one-pager.
finding it, it might be at the end of that packet right there. Keep going.
It was just one pager. Mine was stuck in.
Mine's not in my packet, but I had gotten it previously
Alright.
and printed it. But
So Commissioner Edwards, I don't know where your.
Yep, got it.
Got it.
Got it.
Yay.
It wasn't.
All right.
Yeah.
So, good, but it was in there.
It was there.
Yay. So, the goal of today is to whittle this down to the few items that we would put forward as the county's legislative priorities for the coming session. And Deborah is here. She, as always, is ready to share insights on what might actually have a chance of passing that could inform your decisions. And this is your opportunity to have a conversation about what we want to put forward.
Hi, go ahead, Deborah.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Robin. I'm happy to talk with you. We met in June and we had an initial conversation about what some of your priorities were. And so I see those reflected on this list. And I'm happy to just start going down the list if you want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one is maintaining the judicial reimbursement for state civil cases. And we were successful in getting that included in the current biennial budget. The upcoming legislative session is for supplemental budget purposes, and there will be other things as well. And so I don't think that this needs to be on the agenda for next year, although we definitely want to keep our eye on this and keep communication with the Administrative Office of the Courts, and they've been very supportive of maintaining this for us.
So we can take this off at this time. Are you all comfortable with that?
Yes, but I want to have a conversation, because it might be a good idea for next year to start doing some number tracking. Just in case it does come up or we have issues at the next biennium, that at least we have some form of data to be able to kind of back up our claims. So not sure when we can have that conversation of maybe it's just a good idea to just start tracking once again for a period of time.
Right, so perhaps at the next Superior Court update, we could start to have that conversation with the courts.
Perfect, can we add that to our agenda as one of our items that way?
Yep.
Something else we might want to consider is, so Senator Rolfes was the chair of Senate Ways and Means, and she was very involved in the discussion that we had and the analysis that was done. Senator Robinson is now the chair of Ways and Means, and even though she was vice chair before, it might be helpful just to have a meeting with her during session to remind her that this is in her budget and why it's in her budget, and see if she has any questions. And that might help us as we go into the next biennial budget discussion.
If we are gonna have that meeting, though, we probably then do the numbers the chair's talking about. We need to have something to refer to.
So doing those numbers is a very heavy lift.
Well, or even
and
refer to the ones we already did.
We could
and
refer to the
those
study
years
last
back.
year. And before the county commits to the legislative members to do it again, we want to make sure that the court and the clerk are on board.
So we can share with Senator Robinson how difficult it was to come up with that information and maybe just some feedback from staff on how they believe that those numbers have grown and have that
Yeah.
discussion with her. So I'm happy to do that. Okay, and then the second one on the list is, was something that we've had on our agenda for a couple of years. And it has resulted in legislation. House Bill 1022 is the current bill. Any bills that didn't pass last session will automatically be reintroduced next session, and they will be at the highest point that they got to in the Chamber of Origin. So, House Bill 1022, I believe, died in House rules, and it did pass through two committees on a partisan vote. And that is the bill that would take the Veterans Assistance Levy and the Mental Health and Developmental Disability levies outside of the general levy and create their own levies. There was a lot of controversy about that, and we need to do more work with veterans organizations if we're going to get support for this. There was support, there's obviously support for helping veterans, but there's concern about an increase in taxes. And so in a short session, I think that we should have already had that support lined up. And we can try and get it before January, but it might be difficult to do at this point in time. And then also, 2024 is going to be a big election year. And so there usually is not a lot of interest in creating new taxes when you're going into an election year. So now that being said, there is a bill out there, and the prime sponsor may decide that he wants to push this again. And of course, happy to work it. We did get WASAC support for this, but honestly, they didn't think its chances were very high of passing out of the legislature. So
I just as a follow-up to that, I think Mark Moffett was working on the mental health portion, I think, and then developmentally
Was he?
disability. I mean, isn't that his thing?
That is one of his things, but
And
I was completely unaware that he was doing work in support of the legislation
Well,
that would break it out.
I'm not saying he was. I guess this is his forte, I think, at the health department. And he's
Right.
also a vet. So why couldn't we at least have him be monitoring this and kind of pay attention for the county's perspective?
He could,
Is that legal?
I don't see,
that's what I'm-
sure, of course, for him to monitor the progress of this bill, absolutely fine. And, however, as Deborah mentioned, we've not been terribly successful at getting support from the veteran organizations.
That's the reason. It's because of the confusion that this thing seems to, they don't want to get labeled as a separate new tax. That's what their concern was. At least that's what I came away with the last time out. And I just thought Mark, because he works with the vets, at least kind of explain to him what the deal is, so he's knowledgeable about it. Why not have him kind of shepherd it a little bit? Because he's got the other one anyway. He's doing both. He could do.
Yeah. Quite frankly, I don't think that we've got a chance of getting this bill through.
Well, I don't think it ought to be on our top priority for this year.
That's where.
Yeah, no, I really, I don't think we ought to be trying to push it as one of our priorities. I mean, I've got some other priority issues that, we're trying to get down to 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is not one of them, I don't think.
I think it should be still a top priority, just even if it does not get through, at least we're still talking about it. That way, when the next year comes, when it's not an election year, that we're still kind of pushing it through, right? I feel like our story has remained consistent, and pulling it out and then coming back with it, I think
we're gonna have to do a lot of that work, and I don't want the narrative to be like it's not a concern of ours, because I think it very much is, and so just, I feel like as long as we're kind of keeping educating, even if there's not a chance it's going to pass,
Keeping it alive.
keeping it alive in some way, even if it's on the lower list, right? But just something where at least it's somewhere on there where we can at least touch on it. I think it would be good, knowing that, yeah, it probably isn't. It's gonna be a short legislative session. I also don't think something like this is going to make it very far, but at least as long as we're having those conversations still, it's something that we can gear up for a bigger push.
You could have those 4 to 5 top priorities and then issues of ongoing concern.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So I supported this because, first of all, just let me say, I don't have, in terms of what's possible in a short session, long session, that's for Deborah to give us guidance. I'm speaking just as if every session were the same. This one I supported because my understanding was kind of this was all that we could, it was a very, from my perspective, modest request, and something that had the ancillary appeal of veterans' developmental disability, but kind of from a practical standpoint, all we could accomplish. What I was told last year was that King County was doing something, was advocating for something much more reasonable, like some sort of a 3%, like tied to inflation, like expansion of the property tax cap, which is 25 times more attractive to me in terms of something to do. And so I didn't know that was possible back when we were working this up a couple of years ago, but I was told that it had a lot of support and got pretty far. I didn't track it. I mean, I guess I'm looking to you, Deborah, but if that's something, to me, I'd much rather put that on as our legislative priority, not this. Because we've seen how people get wrapped around in circles because it's so complicated how these levies are. And here we have the veterans themselves, so confused by how it works that they're like opposing us for the, I mean, so it's like, I'm just kind of frustrated and ready to set that aside if there's an actual more substantial proposal that actually has some legs.
So the property tax, there were a couple of bills on the property tax. They did not make it through the session. And I know there's been a lot of discussion at WASAC about that particular topic. Not all counties support that. And I think that my opinion is that we continue to support House Bill 1022, whether it's at the top of the agenda or somewhere, because we're not abandoning that. That's still something we'd like to see. That is a lesser lift than the property tax limit. I know that there will be a lot of local governments that are supporting that, and it will be on their legislative agenda. And so if that's something that the county would also like to signal to their delegation that they are supportive of that, that is also something that is very controversial within the legislature. Whether or not that's going to pass, I'm skeptical, but I mean, there's a lot of weight behind it. And so, there's a lot of stories that talk about, and King County is kind of leading that charge at the county level. I think that if we can get the support of the veterans organizations and maybe the mental health DD community for this kind of a thing, and remember the bill made it optional for a county to do that. They could continue doing it the way that they're doing it now, or they could do it this new way. And we got more voices other than the county voices that are supportive of this. And there were some county voices that were not supportive of this too, of House Bill 1022. And they spoke up as well. But if we could get more voices other than just county voices to support that, I think that's what would give it some legs and help push it forward.
Well, if you think that it has some chance, that's a different consideration. If we're saying, like Commissioner Mejia is saying, if we're saying that we're just kind of keeping it on there to keep momentum going, I'd rather keep momentum going toward a more substantial goal. If that's kind of the strategy, like we know it's not going to pass, but we want to show Thurston County support and get, keep forward trajectory, then I'd rather, if that's the strategic, calculation, then I'd rather focus on the King County effort versus this one. But if you think that, if you're saying that, well, no, this actually can get there, and that one's pie in the sky, then I guess I would defer to your expertise on that.
Well, I am not a member of the legislature, so,
Yeah.
they're gonna make their decisions.
Yeah.
I think that if you never ask, you never get. And I could see where maybe the county would want to put both on their legislative agenda, knowing that maybe neither one will move forward. And if the county is asked, well, if you get this, the 3%, would you be
give up
okay
that?
giving up that? And the
Yes,
answer
we
would
would.
be yes, of
I guess they
course.
could both be mentioned under like a single heading of like
Yeah,
county flexibility or
County
something.
financing
Yeah,
flexibility.
revenue
Yeah.
flexibility. and
Yep,
here's
to
some
support the
examples.
This, or
county.
we'd support that. Yeah, I'd be all
That
right
makes
with that.
sense.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. We can craft something to that effect. That'd be great.
And then on the third bullet is the Blake response.
It's pretty much taken care of, isn't it?
Well, I know that there's going to be additional requests for funding. The Office of Public Defense requested almost $3 million in their decision package on that. And there's gonna be some other bills that are gonna be, or requests coming forward on that. So those are things that if you wanted a general statement about needing that. And then I would also recommend that that the county have specific information on, why they want to support that, why it's needed within the county, that would be helpful also. And the bullet is labeled luxury pet services tax, and maybe if this is a priority item, maybe we could reword it to say additional funding for local animal services or something like that, and not tie ourselves to a particular strategy. I know that Representative Wallen is the leader of the Fur Fighter Caucus within the legislature. It's members of both the House and the Senate, Democrats and Republicans are members of the Fur Fighter Caucus. And I know that an idea was brought to her during the interim to redirect some of the state B&O tax or sales tax from pet stores, things like that, adoption fees, et cetera, and redirect that to counties. So it wouldn't be an additional tax, but it would be the state giving up some of their tax revenue and redirecting it to counties. And so I've reached out to Representative Wallen's office to see if they've had a chance to finalize what their legislative agenda will be for next year. And I haven't heard back yet, but there was also the idea of the luxury pet services tax. And I know that former Representative Kathy Haig, she represented 35th. She's from Mason County. She's also a veterinarian. She had an idea like this several years ago when she was in the legislature, and I know that she's had discussions with other local government folks who are interested in this as well. So I know that idea is still out there.
I'm open to that, broadening it. I think where we are at is we just need a solution for funding, and I think we're willing to look at different opportunities, so, yeah.
And I know when this issue came up a couple of years ago, I believe it was first mentioned, I reached out to Yakima County because they had a similar issue. And they greatly increased their fees for, call them bad actors. And they said that was sufficient in funding their needs, recognizing that their needs are probably much different than our needs. So if we want to move forward with that, I think that we should work probably with the folks that are in charge of the animal shelter here and maybe get something that we could all get behind and support. Is the city of Lacey, are they the lead on that particular?
They're the financial administrative support,
Oh, okay.
but it's a joint committee amongst the three cities in Thurston County, and I think Yelms got a contract in there too.
Okay. So maybe we could reword that then to make it more broad, and then and I'll let you know what I hear back from Representative Wallen. Now moving down to public safety. We had a lot of discussions with legislators about the sexually violent predator LRA placements, the less restrictive alternative placements. And some of the discussions that we had with them, I know one senator, he had a file this thick and he had some ideas. I have not heard about any specific pieces of legislation that might be moving forward. And I know that there's been a lot of correspondence back and forth between the county and the department, and I think the governor's office was involved at one point. And so I'd love to hear from you what your thinking is on that, or any updates that you could give me on that one.
I think our delegation, as far as some of those folks are still interested, I think. I haven't heard any more.
I think we need to, it would be helpful to define what LRA is. Unfortunately, it's a fairly generic usage of that phrase because there are different types of less restrictive alternatives. Because the community treatment facilities are also an LRA compared to the services that are provided on McNeil. But then there's also LRAs which are more of the group living type of situation. And there are LRAs when someone is just, basically placed into the community on an individual basis. Those are all LRAs. And I think the question or the concern that's been is more of that group setting. That is the overall concern that has been addressed or
Isn't
needs
there a
to be
specific RCW that connects and we can just make that direct connection?
Yeah, and I know Leah's online and she's been trying to stay connected to some of the conversations that have been unfolding when the commissioners were not available to attend a meeting that was being convened. But there are safeguards that the county's worked on getting implemented through the legislature in 2021. I know that I personally worked with Senator Stingra and Rolfus on getting those in place where there was deference to local permitting. The challenge has been in the compliance with that based on sort of what the court orders are and what the state agencies actually do. And so they are not being held to doing that, so I'm not sure if additional legislation.
I'm ready, thank you.
But Leah may have other thoughts if you'd like to hear from her.
So what I would recommend that if and I know that you worked on that board and so have a lot of knowledge about that too. If we have some specific ideas on the statutory language that could help with the compliance issue and also maybe create a different definition for SVP LRA. I think that might be something that we could present to our delegation members that have been very actively involved in this and see if they would be willing to sponsor legislation. And then also check in with them and see maybe they've already got something that they just haven't shared with us yet. I'd be happy to have those discussions with them before the breakfast meeting.
Perfect.
Great. So perhaps Leah, who I know is listening in, could help us draft something to just send to Deborah, who could then, help with that. Thank you, Leah. Thumbs up.
And then the next bullet is increase access to the police training academy.
I have something on that, I think that's kind of, I don't know as we need to approach that from an individual county perspective, because it's kind of being addressed for several different locations. And I know even Lacey is right now thinking about building their facility to accommodate a joint training session. So I don't know that it needs to be one of our priorities, because WASPIC will be pushing that.
Yeah.
I mean, we can be supportive, but
And then moving into the category of natural resources, this was something that was on your agenda last time, funding to support the Deschutes Watershed Council. I did a little bit of research on that. I looked to see what the legislature did for the Nisqually Watershed Stewardship Plan. They did provide some funding for that, and they also provided funding for the Whatcom County, depending on how you say it, WIWA or RIA, one Watershed Management Board. Both of those provisos were for implementation of things that they had to do, not for administration. And so, if this is something that you want to keep on your agenda, it would be helpful for me to know what the amount is and how it would be utilized. And then, we could have conversations with our delegation about supporting something like that.
So it sounds like we would not put this on our priority list for this year.
I mean, there's work ongoing, but, and the folks that are working on it are directly in contact with our LD 22 folks, so, I mean, we were doing this in solidarity, so to speak, or support, but I don't feel like we're the tip of the spear on this particular issue. So I'm okay with it if it doesn't make the cut. I mean, it's not gonna.
It can be an item we're in support of.
Yeah.
Yep. The next bullet is Climate Commitment Act implementation funding to support. I'm not recalling the specifics of that particular one. That's a big bucket that crosses operating, capital, transportation.
The language we had last year put this under shared agenda, and it was really just climate. It was really just climate action. The wording was support use of Climate Commitment Act funding for programs to substantially cut climate pollution and reduce cost burden, including medium/heavy duty vehicle electrification, charging infrastructure, and incentives to retrofit and electrify existing homes and buildings. I think this was sort of we had previously made a commitment to put in climate action at a high level, and then with the Climate Commitment Act and those new funding, we just sort of refined that and carried it forward, is my recollection. And the question, I mean, whether we do that again, I'm not as big a fan of things that are like so non-specific, because I don't feel like they have as much. So again, if that gets squeezed out, it's not gonna.
Well, and if there's something from your regional climate plan that you would like to lift and put on your agenda, that would be something to consider also.
Well, I mean, here, I'm more interested in the forest piece, and then I definitely think that this Capitol Lake, Deschutes Estuary needs to be on our regional priorities. That's not something, that's something every jurisdiction in this county is working together on, so I don't know who's developing that. Are you part of that, Deborah?
So I did talk to Ann Larson, who was the legislative director for the Department of Enterprise Services, and now she's the lead for this project.
Yeah.
And Ann's a scientist, and she's got a great background for this. And she told me that the agency has all the funding they need for this biennium. Definitely
$7
there will,
million.
yeah, so definitely there will be an ask for the next biennium. But I don't think that we need anything, I can follow up with Dan again and just, make sure that nothing's changed.
Okay, well, I knew they asked for like 19 or whatever, and they got 7, and that was enough for the short term, but
Right.
the timing of how to make the next ask that you guys can tell me.
That may be something that we work on next year for the 25 session.
Okay.
And I have brought it up at the regional legislative group. So I think that they're supportive, but it's good to know that the state agency has what they need for the next 2 years.
So then legacy forest.
Yeah, I mean, that one is something that relates to, basically, they funded 2,000 acres And we're looking at like 70-something thousand acres that we, that we'd like to have substituted out. And there was an initial ask that, got negotiated down. So I think that, for me, that's front and center to keep, I mean, now it's easier, right? The programs, the parameters, the program site, now it's just increasing the commitment to the number of acres that can be transferred.
And that's the DNR program, is
Yeah.
that right? Okay. And I'm happy to reach out to DNR and see if this is something that they're seeking additional funding for. And that, if.
I know there are, I mean, I got papers all over my desk of, there's an NPR thing there's a lot of groups that are advocating for expanding this program in the way that I'm describing. So we don't have to reinvent any wheel on this. This is work that's being advocated for and is right in line with where we've gone as a county on this issue, so.
And there may be a coalition of other stakeholders that are
I'm
behind
guessing.
this as well. Have you heard from DNR if there is a specific ask
I
next
haven't.
session? Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't know,
Okay, I can
one
reach
way
out
or
to
the other.
And do you know if some of the other stakeholders have this on their, or are planning on putting this on their legislative agenda?
Stakeholders like,
Nature Conservancy, Washington Conservation.
I don't know, but
Action.
I'm certain.
Okay,
I mean,
DNR will probably know. Okay, I'll check with them and I'll get back to Robin and let her know what I hear.
yeah, no, I know for a fact that there's several groups that will be. I just couldn't tell you which ones they are.
Okay. And then the last bullet under this category is use of conservation futures for water rights and clarifying the law to allow conservation futures to be used for water right purchases. And I got a little bit of a preview of this last week. And if there is, again, specific language that the county would like to propose and certain stakeholders that we should be talking to, that with the short session, what I'm hearing is that any new bill needs to be pre-filed in December, starting in December. And committee chairs have already are already putting together their agendas for the first week of legislative session. And that for the most part, not 100%, but for the most part, if you don't have a committee hearing on new legislation the first week of session, the likelihood of it getting through the legislative process is much lower. So if we have ideas on legislation that we would like introduced, we need to work getting the sponsors and then talking with committee chairs and getting a commitment for getting that scheduled for a hearing to get the process moving. And so if there are other stakeholders that would be involved with something like that, and I know the Nature Conservancy had a bill in 2022 regarding restoring local control over the levy rate for conservation futures that didn't go anywhere. It had a hearing and that was it. But they may be, again, an example of a stakeholder that we could work with to help move something like that. So if I could get some sort of a draft, I can start working on that.
Perfect, I'll send that to you.
Okay, I don't remember the conversation specifically on this.
This came from the Transalta.
I do understand that, but about the conservation futures, that's something we went into detail on, because I don't know that I even support this, frankly. I know we need a funding source for these water rights, but it doesn't strike me as what conservation futures is really about. And that could eat up that kind of, we've already got commitments to our habitat conservation plan. We've got priorities in law that focus on salmon recovery. And we have not, I know we can up our amount of, the commissioners have the right to up that amount, but that takes a vote.
It would be a levy lift. It would have to go out to a vote.
Yeah, have to go to a vote. So that's like not gonna happen probably. So I'm not sure that I wanna be fighting for, sucking up all the conservation futures capacity for this point.
Right. So go ahead.
No, I think it was really in the spirit of the allowing for flexibility. knowing that there are always competing priorities, whether it's land conservation or this was just something new that came on the horizon and trying to figure out what's a good or potential funding source to do that.
Yeah, if this doesn't make the list, that's fine.
Well, I might be able to be convinced. I just, here we are talking about prioritizing it, and I'm not even sure I'm in favor of it.
I think I'm with you on this, so just so you know.
Okay. So maybe this is a lower priority at this point. We need to.
We need to have more conversation.
More conversation, come back in 25.
Spin your wheels.
Yeah, let's do that.
And then the next category is public health and social services.
And I just forwarded you an email with some draft language for the first bullet.
Okay, thank you.
So this is one, I think this is important, and is this one where you're saying we need to somehow line up a hearing first week?
Yes.
In order to get this have any chance, because I don't feel like it's gonna be all that controversial, but the process is the process.
Well, and even when it's not controversial and you think it's a good little bill, there's always complications. And I would imagine that there will be some other counties that even though they're not affected, they're gonna wanna weigh in on any kind of procedure that Thurston County
What's the
might wanna
argument
follow.
against this?
Well, last year we had arguments just in regards to amending, what was it, Deborah?
The salary commission?
The salary commission
Oh.
to make it fit under 5. There were so many conversations I had to have with so many other counties they were not even close to that
It was the
300,000.
smallest county over by Spokane was one of them.
But it was just,
Everyone had an opinion.
everyone had an opinion, and then they're signing up against this bill, right? And so there's just something as simple, it never is
Well, it just
quite
seems
simple.
like this fits within this fits within the whole notion. I know Wasac is really big on local control, right? And this is, no one's gonna stop you from putting 5 commissioners on your Board of Health, but the idea that the state's already forced us to expand and now basically forcing us to hyper expand because we're going from 3 to 5, you'd think that a lot of Wasac sentiment would be on our side there.
So we have, we worked with Jane Futterman to actually come up with some proposed language for amendments to the RCW, which I just forwarded to Deborah. There's other 2 components to the strategy moving forward that I'm working with David and Jen on, and that is to try to work with Wasalfo from that perspective. So if they're on board as well, that pulls in all of the local public health jurisdictions, right? So that's one piece of it. And then potentially reaching out to the Department of Health to see if they would be willing to kind of slip that in as part of their agency requested legislation as just a technical fix that just offers that flexibility. So if we can approach it from 3 different fronts, then that might increase our chances of being successful.
Is it like an opt-in thing that you guys come up with, like where it's up to the board?
Correct. It would be up to the Board of County Commissioners to determine what the number of commissioners would be. So
It is really late for agency request legislation. That should have been to the governor's office.
August.
Yeah, like a month or 2 ago.
But we might be able to get them to sign in supporting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it has a hearing.
I'll follow up with David.
So there is some stakeholder work that should be done before session starts. So and thank you for forwarding that so that we can hopefully ensure that there's no miscommunication on what the bill would do. The next bullet is housing. Continue funding for supportive housing and related services. I know that the Department of Commerce submitted a decision package for, I can't remember the number, to continue to help with housing I think it's like 10 million a year, and that might be additive on what they've already got, I'm not sure.
How much money?
Don't quote
Did
me.
you say billion?
No.
No, but it could easily use that much.
Shouldn't this be like on our regional priority list?
So we've been talking about this at the RHC. Both Lacey and I brought it up at the regional legislative committee. Something about the regional committee is that group likes to focus their short list on items that are unique to Thurston County. And there is very little about the need for supportive housing that is unique to Thurston County. And we tried to frame it that way, as ours is one of the very few counties that received funding under the rights of way projects.
It's because the governor had to look at it out there on the freeway.
Very unique to
That's
Thurston
right.
County.
That's right. So I did frame it that way with the legislative work group for the interlocal one. So we also, and Commissioner Mejia, perhaps you'd like to talk about the conversation at the RHC.
Yeah, this was one of my top priorities for the Regional Housing Council. This is the first year that we've ever even talked about legislative priorities. Staff have come up with a number of 8 proposals that are in dire need. One of them is this, as well as rental assistance. We have asked staff to kind of come up with a top one where maybe there's a possibility that it can be added into all of our legislative agendas, since the RHC does not have a lobbyist, and just maybe as an in support item that, you know, just saying this is the Regional Housing Council's top legislative priority, and we're also in support of this because of course it affects all of us. So that's, those have been the conversations. It's going to be voted on at the next Regional Housing Council meeting, which one is the top priority. And then hopefully get some support from all the regional entities involved.
So while it is a regional and potentially statewide item, I think the more voices toward the extreme need for this, the better.
And when is that meeting?
It is
Early November.
early November, yeah. So I think this one is off for now until we get something from the Regional Housing Council, and then it can be an item that we're in support of.
Okay, and the next bullet is ITA hearings, full funding for the BHASOs. But, you know, that's been something that's been ongoing as well.
Didn't they do something on this last year, but not quite enough, or am I just misremembering that? Because here, looking at last year's, and it said, the counties and BHASOs work closely with state healthcare authority to develop a $9 million budget to request the rising costs. Did that get through?
I want to say yes.
I want to say yes too.
Yeah, I know Brad and I communicated on that also. And
I know it wasn't adequate in
Yeah.
certain ways, but something got through.
Yeah, and it was an HCA request.
So we can take this off our list.
I don't know.
Well,
Gary,
we'll want to support it.
Have you heard anything new about this one?
Not anything new, but I do think as it moves forward, we'll be wanting to support that.
So the
But I
county
don't
would
think
have
it-
general support, but
Yeah,
not
but
have it
not-
on our,
not
on our one
priorities,
page.
because it's going to be a
Right.
statewide issue.
Right.
And then the next bullet item is streamlining the licensing for immigrant medical doctors.
And this was my item, and we can remove this. I'm working with Representative Bateman directly on this, as well as our local hospitals on this item. So maybe something that I bring to the Board of Health to support, but as Board of County Commissioners, since I'm working directly with.
The next bullet item is extend municipal utilities to public facilities.
So this was basically an extension to what's allowed under GMA currently, which allows for services to be extended to schools. But for specifically to allow to public facilities, like our facilities that are located on Tilly, specifically and really for environmental protections and flexibility in terms of the services that can be provided within the footprint of those.
Didn't they do something like that for schools?
Schools are allowed, right,
Yeah.
so this would be sort of an extension
Kind of
of
an
that.
extension of what's going on.
Is that a WASAC supported fee?
WASC doesn't have a legislative agenda.
They're continuing, because it's a short session, they're continuing what was developed.
I just mean this concept in general.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it
I don't
would be
remember.
one that we would ask for support from WASAC. But it's a short session, you know, it's GMA, which can be fraught for needing a much longer, robust conversation. But I think it's definitely something that would not only benefit Thurston, I mean, it would benefit all, you know, counties that are providing services in the rural areas, but needing to wash equipment and remove salts and not have them potentially enter our waterways, et cetera.
Is Tilly, I mean, is this,
For example,
is
I
the
mean,
priority for us, the fact that we want to extend it to Tilly, or is there some other specific project we have in mind?
no, that would be probably the primary example, because we're just south of the Tumwater UGA. And because we can't get those services there, we're having to develop basically vehicle washing up at the work, and which means that it's very inefficient to take the vehicles from Tilly, drive them up to the work just to have that washing occur before coming back down. Because we're only on septic, so it's not really conducive to being able to handle all of those
So
salts and materials.
I looked at the statute on that in the GMA. Have you gotten specific language that you think needs to be changed in order to allow that to happen? Let me read you it's very short. It's 3670A, which is the GMA. It's 110 sub 4. In general, cities are the units of local government most appropriate to provide urban governmental services. In general, it is not appropriate that urban governmental services be extended to or expanded in rural areas, except in those limited circumstances shown to be necessary to protect basic public health and safety and the environment, and when such services are financially supportable at rural densities and do not permit urban development.
Could be flexibility already in the statute. I think it's just often been challenged. So I'm not sure if.
But they
We'll
did
look at it
something
again.
under that for schools, and why couldn't it just be an attachment to that amendment? Because they must have amended that for schools, because they did it, to address public facilities, schools and public facilities, or, you know, could be a fire department that wanted to do something like that.
Right, exactly.
So I think that'd be a simple way to approach it.
So maybe we tee this up for next year instead of this year.
And in the meantime, do a little bit of homework and analysis on
Current language.
why the current language doesn't work, and how we would want to change that. Okay. And then the last bullet under this category is emergency crisis hospital capacity.
Commissioner Edwards, this is something that I think you were talking about.
Yeah, but really it's not unique to Thurston County. You know, it's a problem that's, like in our case, one of the most recent things that happened is that we've lost our brain trauma group
Right.
that was treating folks here locally. Well, when we lost them, so now our transports, instead of coming to St. Pete's, they have to go to Seattle or Tacoma. And the detrimental process is that while those people are being transported, it takes our service units out of service, our response units out of service for an extended period of time. So it's just something that all the hospital folks are working with to try and address. So I don't think it has to be one of our issues, Mr. kind of an awareness to, if something comes up like
Great.
that, just to be able to support it.
That'd be great, because I wasn't quite sure what we proposed
Yeah.
specifically.
And then the next and last category is invest in local infrastructure. The first bullet, local park system, provide ongoing funding source for the operation and maintenance of local parks and trails. There was a one-time $5 million appropriation for local parks. They had previously done that for state parks. And I have not heard whether or not Representative Ryu is planning on, she was the lead on that one. She's planning on asking for that again in the following biennium. I know that the grant program opened up for that. I think there was $100,000 maximum.
And we've applied.
Okay, and you should find out, I thought it was at the end of this month that they were gonna be notifying people. Is that
Right, I've not received information from the department on if it was successful or if it's not formula grant, but I know that we've applied and I think that we anticipate receiving it.
okay?
I think this particular bullet item was about looking at greater flexibility for using a current funding that we might have, whether it's park impact fees for M&O. Because right now it's really focused on expansion, but it's one thing to expand the infrastructure facilities for the community, but it's difficult if you don't have a revenue source or source of funding to actually maintain that. So we're really set up based on the limitations of the funding stream for failure. You can expand, but you can't maintain it. So it was really, I think, trying to tap into that a little bit more.
So we did have a bill, or I know that Romero was interested in a bill. And did we try to run
We
one
did,
last
Beth,
year? Yeah.
Or not last year, it was like 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years
Was
ago.
it that long ago? Wow, the COVID years are just like a black hole for me. So I didn't think that bill got very far.
I'd have to look.
Yeah, we'll see if we can.
It didn't, we had a letter opposing it from either building industry or master builders.
Well, exactly.
They had some, I thought, pretty convoluted argument about
I'm
I can't even
not
remember
at
the
all
argument.
surprised, but it's the same type of issue that we run into whenever we try to expand REIT.
They shouldn't have to pay for,
yeah.
like, they're supposed to pay for capacity, they shouldn't be paying for.
Ongoing M&O, that's a
When-
tax thing.
When you have discussions about something in this arena, I don't know if you know this or not, but what I use oftentimes when I'm talking to folks is the county has such limited resources for funding parks. And I oftentimes compare them to Lacey, and we've got 6 parks in Thurston County. No, we've got 6 people in Thurston County working the parks division, and we've got parks spread all around the county. And Lacey's got 38 people, I think, working the parks program in the city of Lacey. And all it does is show the disparity between the ability of the county to fund, which we do what we can do, and we're always trying to stretch, but we just don't have the funding sources available. And that just kind of shows it, you know, almost like a picture's worth 1,000 words. You know, you got 38 people over here working for a smaller jurisdiction than the county is. We've got a lot more land to deal with and spread out. It just kind of explains the problem without saying too much.
So
It's an elevator speech.
Right. The other thing is that the funding, the one-time funding that was provided was for major maintenance. It's not the ongoing M&O that we're required to pay for, and we could do major maintenance out of REIT today. There's no prohibition against that.
We can't do
So
M&O.
it was great to get the money, and we're gonna say thank you, but it's not what we really need.
We can do M&O out of REIT, that's just capped, correct?
The
That's a
M&O
conservation
in
futures
REIT,
fund.
Oh, conservation.
Yeah, we do M&O out of conservation futures. We do the maximum amount that we can.
I think it's
25%. Yep, goes to parks and trails. We use our entire M&O allowance in conservation future toward parks and trails, even though we have other needs that we could have used that for. But you can do major maintenance out of REIT. Now, you could do M&O out of REIT under very limited circumstances if your CIP is 100% fully funded, and it's not. So that's what stops us there. Well, we've got a courthouse and a jail and a elections center on our CIP that's not fully funded.
No, I said it never will be.
Yeah, it never, exactly, it never ever
Because you
will
always
be.
line
That-
up your projects for the future, right? Like,
Yeah, so that's right. We've totally tapped out REIT for just the construction end of things.
I'm
So-
also wondering if WRPA, the Washington Recreation and Parks Association, is looking at something like this for their legislative agenda, so I can reach out to them and see what they've got, and I'll let you know.
Other jurisdictions, other county jurisdictions must be faced with this problem.
Well, one would think, or they've implemented park districts.
Yeah, I don't think the counties have done that very much, though.
I don't know.
If that's successful.
I don't know. Regional park districts in King County are extremely successful.
Yeah, but King County is kind of metro, you know.
Didn't Pierce Tacoma do a joint parks district?
No, Tacoma has one.
I think they did it joint with the county. So, and we tried to approach our cities 10 years ago to do joint park districts, and they were not interested. And as you know, 2 of them have gone out on their own. And another interested in going out again.
3 of them went out on their own, just 2 of them were successful.
2 were successful, and the 3rd is interested in going out again.
But yeah, the Tacoma park system's really cool.
But if you look at Parkland and Spanaway, all the way out towards the mountain for miles, that's all retail, unincorporated.
All right.
That's their funding source.
So we'll
You know,
look
they
for
have
that
an
bill
unbelievable
that we
retail
had
Sales
proposed,
tax funding source.
and then we can decide whether or not
We
you
don't
want
have
this on the
hardly
list.
anything, if you think about it.
Okay, thank you. And the next to last bullet, the Thurston County Elections Building construction.
Yep.
We did ask for funding. Last session, we were not successful.
I think we need to
And
continue asking for
I think a selling point for you,
It's on Tuesday, right?
Well, it
if
depends
this-
on Tuesday.
if it passes, you know, we've got this law enforcement issue on for the 7th. If that passes, I think it could be said that we've tried to cover, you know, utilizing
Local sources of
local
revenue.
sources to deal with it. And it makes it a little easier for the legislature to say, well, you know, have you got anything in the fight? Well, yeah, we went out to the voters and asked with this part of our program, you know. So just so you know that, that's.
Either way, it kind of helps, you know, if we lose, then it's like, we tried. and
Yeah,
now
we
got
tried,
nothing.
either, yeah.
Or we were
that's right.
successful and we've got money to put toward it, but it's
Either
not.
way, it does help, I think.
Cause I think you've said in the past that we often get, you know, you'll get asked, well, have you taken advantage of
This or
the
that.
mechanisms you have? And here
And
we
this one, yeah.
tried to put election security, well, we did put election security together with public safety to try to make that nexus, and we'll see how the voters say Tuesday.
I'm also hearing there's gonna be a public safety bill introduced. AWC is looking at doing something, it's one of their top legislative agendas, which would allow councilmanic vote for counties or cities to increase their public facilities tax for those that are already at the maximum at 3/10.
We don't have very much public utilities tax, though.
I'm sorry, not public utilities, public safety.
Oh.
And so, anyway, so
Would it be a sales tax or?
and it would be the bill would allow it to be done councilmatically if you chose to do so.
Kind of like the home fund.
And
Kind of like the home fund.
It's hard to do though when you just got, the voters just
Yeah,
told you no.
just get kicked in the
Yeah.
leg, yeah. So, we'll
I
see.
mean, that's,
Maybe use our experience, because we'll know by the time the
Yeah.
legislature's going.
We'll know for sure. But I think it still needs to be on there. Secretary of State came over and told us, that election security was a top priority for him and paramount. And I think, just,
Right. So
They
where's
actually
his
They didn't
support?
put
so,
much money
yeah,
on it.
so maybe it's something that he can help us push, since,
I
Since
did
he
talk with
showed
him last year and his legislative director about it. It was not on their legislative agenda, but if it continues to be something, Thurston County can't be the only county. If it continues to be, maybe that'll be something that he'll
Maybe.
And then the last bullet was the Southwest Washington Ag Park. They did receive 1.25 million in the capital budget last year. Are they, so is
So
that
we
something?
should take that off then if they just got money. So here's the shorter list that I've captured. Funding for counties, through a property tax change. We'll figure out a better way to frame that. Either the mental health and veterans or 3% plus population or some way. We'll figure out a way to frame that. Funding for animal services, refining the definition of sexually violent predator LRA placement. Something about the protection for legacy forest, either removing stands from the harvest or allowing for the purchase of them by the counties, funding for that. Addressing the Board of Health membership, parks, M&O funding, funding for our election center, and then also, depending on what the RHC puts forward, supporting for continuation to support housing.
I think
So-
that sexually violent predator business is still a priority. You talk about getting people at the courthouse. Look what we ended up with when that was on the books. The public is very interested in that.
So that gets us down to 8. That's a pretty good list.
Did you put the sex offender one?
Yep, I got it there. We'll now go and do a rough draft of what the priority list would look like. We'll work more with Deborah on refining these and getting language for those things that would become bills. And bring this back probably in next week's the 7th, and then we're at Wasatch. So we're gonna try to turn it around pretty quick and get it back to you next week.
Did you want to add something around the environment?
The climate or environment stuff?
before I wanted to, before I forget, on the piece about forests, and if we're working through that, I would just point out that, there's a lands commissioner campaign upcoming, and at least two of them, I think the two biggest candidates for that position have both come out and said they're going to find a way to remove. So when you're talking about momentum for this or framing of this or what groups are behind it, that's something else to look at, is what those candidates are saying, because that's going to become, I think that's going to feed into where the legislature discussion might feed into as well. It's just something new since last year. Well, yeah, I don't know how many we're going to be able to fit in here.
I think we'll need to shorten it.
I would like to, yeah, I'm okay. unless we can come up with something more targeted on a client that, you know, a particular bill or thing, then I'm okay to keep that off this year, just because it's vague and high level, and we've had it on there a couple of years. So maybe something that I'll ask at the next climate steering meeting and see if there's, because we'll probably as a region come up with something from that group, a letter.
Probably, possibly.
So that may be the place where we address that.
Great. So I'll draft this up and then we'll take one more run at it next week and possibly take one or two more items off. Okay, tighten it up. Thank you so much for joining us, Deborah.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so with that, we're way over time.
Yeah, we've blown past the time.
But I want to address at least the ARPA funding for Quinn Street and the
Yes.
extension of the Public Facilities District. So
Very quickly, the ARPA item is, you will recall, thank you so much, Deborah, that under affordable housing, there is 600,000 that was earmarked for supporting Quint Street for Olympia in the coming year. And what we are recommending to you is that you put this in the approved column, that we would go ahead and do the contract with Olympia contingent on Olympia identifying an ongoing funding strategy for M&O for Quint Street.
and Quinn Street is going to be, some of the funding, long-term funding that they're looking for is to be included in what Keely mentioned this morning, in terms of the right-of-way housing and opening Quinn Street up for those services. So that's one of their strategies moving forward. They just need, that assistance to cover this gap for this coming year.
Right. So I'm gonna ask commissioners to approve going forward with the contract with the city of Olympia. And we'll bring it back for formal approval on a Tuesday afternoon, but this moves it into the approved column and gives us a green light to move forward. So can I get?
Is that gonna be, the full 600, or is that
Yes.
the maxed out, and it might only be 525?
They need the full 600. Yep, all of it. So, thumbs up, thumbs down, 2, 3, thumbs up, thank you. That's done.
Okay, and then next is the extension of the Public Facilities District. And
Yes, so the county and the cities of Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater, many years ago, looks like back in 2003, entered into an interlocal agreement to form a public facilities district for regional centers. That's the legal title. And what the group decided to spend the money on that they collected through tax for this district.
And is it still being collected?
It is still being collected, and it was spent on the development and construction of the RAC in Lacey, the Lacey Athletic and Recreation Center, and the Hands-on Children Museum. Those were the two facilities designated as supported by this district. The district is coming to a close, and it's my understanding that last year legislation passed that makes it possible to extend these districts to up to 40 years. Under past law, you could only have them for 25 years. Now you can extend them for an extra 15 years. And that would provide funding that can be used for rehabilitation or expansion of the facilities that were established under the original district. So the cities have all agreed, and they are asking the county to agree to an extension of our district for another 15 years. And that would support rehabilitation and expansion of the RAC and the Hands-On Children Museum. The cities, 2 cities have already taken action on this. It came to my attention that Romero had not discussed this with the board. There had been an impression that it had already been agreed to by the county, but it hadn't gotten before you, so I am bringing it now. If you have any concerns, please let me know and I will follow up on them. Otherwise, it is on your agenda for next Tuesday for approval.
I have some issues.
Go ahead.
The dollar amount raised, what can we look forward to as far as how much money is coming in? How much is available now in the fund? And the one thing maybe that is a new possibility is the YMCA is proposing over at the brewery site I want to say not racquetball. What's that new thing?
Pickleball.
A pickleball regional center. They've got a pretty good program roughly laid out. So have my seatmates have you heard about that?
Yes.
Yes.
So my concern is, are we now throwing a roadblock against potentially utilizing that fund source to help that proposal move forward? And I don't know what the proposal is, but it's gonna be very much like the RAC. It's gonna be a regional facility that is got a lot of potential, I'm told. I don't know the first thing about pickleball. I'm told it's, an up and coming thing. And they're gonna use those existing buildings
Quite
that are
popular.
down there to have this big layout and have regional tournaments or in the Northwest from the whole United States or whatever. I mean, it
So-
sounded like a pretty grandiose plan. And I don't wanna cut our throat.
Right, you don't wanna, if that's a potential.
Right.
So it is my understanding after 2 meetings that I've been in with the city managers, that there is an interest in Tumwater for forming a public facilities district or expanding this public facilities district to address some type of development around the brewery district.
Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
That's not this. This is very simply an expansion for an extra 15 years of the current public facilities district to support those 2 items. And then Tumwater, the city manager from Tumwater has said that she will bring more information for further discussion about the expansion to include the brewery district. So that idea is out there being discussed. It's not fully cooked yet. This, however, is needed.
Okay, let me ask you this. When does this one expire?
So I believe that the current expiration date is coming up pretty soon, because it was only for 25 years.
Oh, well, we've got,
This extends
3
it,
5
oh,
years.
no, I don't think.
I thought you said
They
2003.
are anxious to get this passed.
2004.
It was
So it
created in
has,
2004.
it extends
into
to
an ILA.
40 years. Of course, they didn't put into this agreement what the new expiration or the current expiration date is.
Well,
So I can certainly get that answer for you.
well, yeah, but I
Um,
think we need to have some other answers. I don't wanna limit, nor do I wanna go out with the public. I don't wanna do anything until after the election, to be honest with you. I don't even wanna talk about stuff till after we see where we're at in the week.
Okay, so.
That's just
in-
my prerogative. My concern is that we've got some pretty heavy stuff going. Need anybody having any ammunition, we're.
Okay, so Lacey is the fiscal, just to try to answer a few of your other questions. Lacey is the fiscal agent for the district. In 2022, which was the last full year of the tax collection, they collected $2.57 million. Percentage of allocation, right now, you have to remit, 0.033% goes to the state, and 28% goes to Olympia in support of the Hands-On Children Museum, and 71% goes to Lacey. And let's see, I had asked. The tax was first collected in 2003 and currently expires 25 years after that, so.
So we got a couple of years.
So there are a couple of years, but what the cities have said, both Lacey and Olympia are trying to go out for funding for renovation and expansion. And to do so, their funders want to know that there's an ongoing
source.
revenue stream. So that's why it is important to them to take action on this now and not wait.
And these are funded through a rebate from the state portion of the sales tax, correct? PFDs?
The district is authorized to receive a portion of the sales and use taxes generated in the 4 jurisdictions. So it does look like an offset.
And this was a legislative change to be able to extend the
For an
duration
extra
of them.
15 years.
I'm not against doing any of the above.
Right.
I just don't wanna end up, here we are, this is the first I've heard about this, so we're being asked to do this
I understand.
in a week's notice or something like that. And we've got this other proposal from Tumwater pending that I don't know a lot about, but I have talked to some of the management from the YMCA. And they did come see you guys too, did they?
I've had multiple meetings about this.
Yeah.
With different parties that are involved.
So I just don't know how it all fits. You talk about, well, we might work with Tumwater and do something. Well, I don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot because we were rushed into something and ended up with some technical issue where you can't do this and that because now you've done this. And that's why I hate these last minute things that don't give us enough time to.
My apologies
have
that you did not hear about this sooner. I did not realize that Romero had not already discussed it with you.
And I'm not against it. It's just that I'm afraid we can help. Maybe we can make a bigger impact, that rack is a great thing over there. Well, it sounded like this would be a great thing of some kind. So I just want an option to be able to
Sure.
look at it. We
So
know
what is it
nothing
that we're
now.
trying to do here? You want to put this on for next week or?
So I put this on the agenda
Because
for
it's not-
next week. We told the cities that we would try to run it as soon as possible. That does not mean that you have to vote on it next week. We can move it to the next agenda, which I think would be November 21st.
Looks
And
like it
give
is-
you a little more time and allow me to follow up on questions you may have. But the only thing this does is extend it, the current agreement would be extended for 15 years. As allowed under
And the
state
only
law.
reason I'm hanging fire on that whole thing is if you asked me this after next week, I'd have a different opinion maybe. I just don't want to even talk about it right now.
Okay, so then, we can have more conversation about this. I understand kind of where the board is because I had the same reaction when Robin was like, I received this from Scott, and I was just like, I don't know. I was like,
Scott sent it and said it's ready to sign.
And I told Robin, I was like, I don't remember ever discussing this. I was like, I don't think the board has been briefed on this, so wanted.
It hasn't been. I mean, Rick Walk talked to me at a meeting I was at over there and giving me a preview of it and reminding me that the RAC was a joint project with Thurston County. We purchased the land based on conservation futures, I believe.
Yes, we did.
And then we not having the opportunity to, the funding to do M&O, we partnered with Lacey that they would run this facility. And as Commissioner Edwards said, it's been a great success.
Yep.
But, you know, just in case we think that it's Lacey's issue or that we're not part and parcel of it, we have been from the outset. And I don't understand, I do understand what Rob said about it's a holdback of state sales, kind of like 1406 was, because that's consistent now. You're ringing a bell in terms of what I heard from the YMCA about the brewery project, which, by the way, pickleball is just a tiny. Don't
There's a
fixate
little
on
piece of it?
pickleball. It's going to be
Oh.
swimming,
Okay, big.
softball,
Oh, okay,
soccer, indoor, every kind of
Well,
sport you
kind
can
of like
imagine.
a rack plus or something, huh?
Oh, to the nth degree.
Okay.
Well, one
Okay.
would wonder if the Nisqually, the new Nisqually project, goes with the sports,
Facility of some kind.
concept rather than the,
Casino thing.
that if
You know,
that
I
would
was at a
preclude
presentation,
the
just
success of
for,
something like that.
Cynthia Aiel gave a presentation yesterday, a little bit about the history of the tribe. And one of the questions was, well, can you tell us a little bit about what's gonna go on over by Hawks Prairie? And there was not one mention of a casino. Everything else was talked about, but,
Well, I mean,
so I was kind of surprised by that.
I think that casino piece is still up in the air. There's federal
They haven't
approvals
figured it
involved
out
and
yet
they
themselves.
can't count on that.
No.
But they've got a plan B. So if they don't get approval for casino, they've still worked the numbers and think they can have a very successful project without it. It would just be, with it, they'd have more funding to do more this or that. But anyway, but I guess what I wanted to say is that what I don't understand is public, I mean, I barely knew, I mean, I'd heard about that nothing's come up since I've been on the board that related to this. This happened like 2003 and it's just been cruising along.
Right.
So I barely even knew about the whole RAC Hands-On Children's Museum Public Facilities District, frankly. I mean, isn't there a board that we have to apply?
Apparently
And we're always
there
like, what is this thing?
Yes, there is a 7-member,
Yeah.
Public Facility District Board of Directors.
Yeah, well, that's what I've heard. You don't have to go into that, but that's what I know about this is when we've had to approve a member for that board. So what I don't know is how that would fit with and I'm just trying to piggyback on Commissioner Edwards' concerns, how that would piggyback with a new one, and you said maybe they could be expanded, but if they expanded, do we get more money? You know, I mean, or does the state holdback shift if we add more facilities into the district? Because otherwise I don't see how that works.
You wouldn't get more money to the PFD per se, but it extends the timeline by which the local PFD would be eligible to receive that funding. So all PFDs around the state are kind of scrambling to make sure that they meet the criteria so that they can continue to get the funding. Otherwise, if they sunset and don't take action to do it, then the dollars will stop.
So I can, that's a sure thing. But again, I can certainly ask the city managers to address the items that you've brought up.
Maybe Tumwater city manager will be important because it's like, hey, we're trying to we're trying to cultivate a future partnership with you. We don't want to make sure that we don't get crossways in terms of the money
Right.
and the Can you only be in one district? Can you create overlapping?
She's been very clear that Tomater is interested in finding a way to be active in this.
Because they're
For
part of
the-
this too, right? Even though.
Right,
Nope.
right, but even with her.
They are part of
um,
this agreement?
Yes, Tomater, Lacey, Olympia, and Thurston County are all members of this district and have an interlocal agreement. And Tomater has already affirmed that they will be approving this.
Well, that makes it a little easier for
agreement.
me, but I still, just
Right.
plug, just.
Okay,
it
so-
actually
And I
bugs
don't
me.
want to push you into anything, so we
Then-
can extend it.
My proposal is let's move this till November 21st. And then, but maybe next week during agenda setting, we can bring this item back and go through some of the items and some of the questions that commissioners have a question on and,
So that I can follow up.
yeah, and then that way we have enough time to kind of discuss it and. since we-
Excellent,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Is that okay?
Mhm.
If you have any more questions for Robin, that maybe, please send those, that way we can have a full discussion on this next week.
Yep.
Okay, we're done. It's 12:50. We're adjourned.